All right, so we are live now. No more swearing. No more telling Nishant what we really think.
We really think Nishant needs more money for a better computer.
Well, I think I need more money for a better computer too.
No, I
Well,
need.
Joe, you make a little bit more than Nishant does.
Yeah, I spend a little bit more than Nishant does too. I got 3 kids.
That's true.
Don't worry about it. 4 years down the line, even if I settle with a family, it'll be the same. Right.
Everybody always needs more money.
Oh,
Well, when you get more money, you restructure your finances so you're spending it. Gee, I deserve better than this.
and
Or if
mom,
you don't, the government will find a way to spend it for you.
yeah, we have income tax. We pay income tax. So what, like if we earn 1 lakh per month, we get only 60,000. That's a lot of tax to be cut.
Wow,
Only guaranteed
that's a
one
lot of
tax and
tax.
taxes.
You need to move, son.
Exactly. Let's see.
I remember Germany in the early 90s, they were taxing everybody right after the wall went down. If you had more than one TV, they taxed you for it. If you had more than one car, they'd tax you for it. And
Yeah,
if you had
well,
more than what they considered a necessary number of bedrooms in your house, they would tax you for that. So you had a huge number of people would take their homes and sublet them out. In fact, our first apartment over there was originally a single family home that had been converted over into an apartment building.
when I am working, after they take out the various taxes and fees that they take out, I usually get about 78% of my paycheck. So, of course, Tennessee does not have a state income tax.
You know, taxes are a bit of a pain, but
Oh, I thought US didn't have tax.
oh no, we have income tax. We have quite a lot of
Every state's different.
and then each
Well,
we
we
have
have a lot of
federal
taxes.
we have federal income tax, and then we could possibly, depending on what state we live in, have state income tax. Now Texas doesn't have state income tax, but a lot of other states do.
There are a few cities and counties that have an income tax.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you guys, in US, we don't have those purchase tax.
Oh, we also have purchase taxes. We also have tax that's
But they are
added to
fairly
every
low.
sale. Yeah. It's
Why
just
7%, maybe.
why
And-
is a similarly configured Acer laptop more cheaper in the US compared to India? That's the
Sales
my
tax
thought.
can depend on the area.
Well, the dollar prices you gave me
Gasoline
are quite
tax.
comparable. The difference is you don't make the money
Alcohol,
to pay
tobacco.
those dollar prices.
Oh,
all sorts of
The,
taxes.
the numbers
all
that you
sorts of
told me for a
taxes.
T560 were about what I would buy, actually a little bit cheaper than I buy a T560 for here. But since you're making so much less money, it's a bigger burden on you.
yes. The wages are quite low for like entry level in India. I can truly say that.
oh, the wages for entry level here are below, your ability to actually live on, and that's a major thing right
Yes.
now. So,
That is
Yes.
the truth.
yeah.
When minimum wage was installed, it was really close to being a living wage.
Well, that's what it's
And
meant to
prices
be.
went up and other things went up and it didn't. And even though it did creep up a little bit, it's less than half of what it needs to be.
Yeah.
You just need to work harder.
Yeah,
You just
sure.
need to work harder
I
and
can
longer.
see all those billionaires working harder, going off on space excursions. That's hard work, you know.
Yeah.
See, that's the whole myth of the American dream, that if you work harder, and we've got some people that are still in poverty with their families, that are working 3 jobs, and their wife is working 2 jobs, and they're still not making it. So the American dream is a myth.
It's
Yeah,
still
it always
Indian
was.
dream about cycling in America and Europe.
No, it wasn't always, Bill. When I was born, it wasn't a myth. My dad had a single job. He provided for our family. Mom was really tight with money, but we had a house that just recently sold for $650,000, although they only paid $18,000 for it when they bought it. We're in a nice neighborhood. We had schools, everything. We had all the food we needed, etc. So in the 50s, in Los Angeles, with the prices that were in Los Angeles in the 50s, it was possible to make a living on minimum wage or near minimum wage job. They also had free education.
Bit of a utopia in those days.
And they instantly tried to lower their taxes, and they lowered their taxes by taking the money away from their children and grandchildren.
Where is Norbert?
Norbert and Josh and
Josh said he wasn't going to be on.
well, the
That
other
was
Josh,
Hawk.
right? Josh
Oh.
Thacker should be on.
Yeah.
They're 2 minutes late. They're fired.
Yep.
You also have to remember that when Eisenhower
cutting
was
their
president
pay.
in the early 50s, income tax on rich people was between 60 and 80%.
Tax the rich, huh?
Now they just don't pay taxes.
They got
Even
so
if
many
they pay
ways
taxes, they pay
out of
less
it.
taxes than a poor person, percentage-wise. This is what everyone from Reagan, Bush, and Trump did to us. Keep giving the tax breaks to the people that don't need it, and the burden has to go somewhere.
And we're still
Those are the
trillions
people
of
propping
dollars
up
in debt.
That's not real money.
Well, no, I keep having this conversation with people, and I think Moss was one of them. And you know, they're waiting for people to realize that cryptocurrency isn't real money. And it's like, you think the money that we have is actually real money? Well, it's backed by gold. What's the value of gold?
Not backed by anything.
No, the U.S.
Backed by
currency is not
nothing.
backed by gold.
Okay, well, this is
Backed
the
by
excuse some
hearsay.
people have
They
given me.
ran out of gold a long time ago.
But that's the point I'm trying to make. You know, things have the value that we say that they have.
Right.
As a consensus,
Well,
not
a
as an
fiat
individual.
currency is one thing, but a cryptocurrency is not even a fiat currency.
Well, exactly. But it still has the value that we
Cryptocurrency
give
is
it in the
truly
same way that
imaginary.
But
In the-
yeah, it's still the same
a
rules.
paper
It just-
bill
the
is-
value is whatever we say it is.
a paper bill is just as imaginary. It's just, you know, you're looking at the bill and saying, okay, it's worth X amount. And it's agreed on that it's worth X amount. And it's the same thing with a
It is
cryptocurrency.
based on the full faith and credit of the U.S. government or whatever government issued it. And cryptocurrency has no such faith and credit.
Well,
There is
he is.
Norbert.
it has just as much value as everybody else gives it. Now, granted, because it doesn't have the backing, it's a lot more volatile. Like, everybody could decide tomorrow that it's worth nothing, and then it becomes worth nothing.
I still don't know why anyone would buy Tether, because Tether is tethered to the value of the U.S. dollar, and so it doesn't go up and down except as the dollar goes up and down.
Right. Well, USDT, which is what you're talking about, the reason you get USDT as opposed to USDC or USD is because they give you 4% for holding onto it.
Oh,
So your money makes
Did that-
money without having to do a whole lot else. It's proof of stake as opposed to proof of work. So if you have USDT as opposed to USDC, your money is actually making money, literally.
so how's all your Monero doing?
I don't have any
We
Monero.
lost him.
I
You used to have Monero.
I did, and then the place where I had Monero, well, got hacked.
I'm sorry.
That's
I didn't
another
think-
thing. Your dollar bill will not get hacked.
Yeah, it has the FDI. Well, even if it does get hacked, which does happen, it has the FDIC backing it. So if you lose your money, you can get your money back, et cetera, blah blah blah. But yeah, like I said, much more volatile, but it still has the value.
With the money in my pocket.
Well, we had a Norbert for a good 10 seconds.
Yeah. Well,
We were depressing him talking about money.
there he is. We
Thought he had
should
the
be
wrong
depressing
podcast.
Nishan talking about money.
No.
Here I am, a poor person in hello Norbert, we hear you.
He's got the mute button on.
I heard him say
Okay,
hello.
I just had to quickly remove Pipewire and reinstall Pulse Audio because I switched to Pipewire but forgot to test Audacity and I couldn't suddenly get it to record, so
All right.
I'm here.
Give me 1 minute. I'm going to use the restroom real quick. Hopefully Josh is here by then.
So Moss, I think
Yes?
you're the oldest host among us,
What's that?
No.
experience-wise, in mintCast.
What's the question?
You're one of the oldest and the original hosts of mintCast.
Well, Leo, Tony, Joe, and myself, and 3 other people came in at the same time.
Because I was
At the
reading-
time, there were only 2 hosts, and they both wanted to quit. And the one guy held us, brought us in for one show and said, "Okay, next show's all yours."
Wow. That wasn't Joe Resington, was it?
No, it wasn't. Joe had left before that.
Oh.
How many Joes we have?
We've had only 2.
Count the Joes.
We have Joshes.
We
Yeah,
do
man.
have a mintcast hosts file up there somewhere. It says who hosted on what shows. I do not know that it was updated. Bo promised he would do that when I
Up
left.
there somewhere.
The number of
But
shows is the
if it
same as the
hasn't been
number of
updated, it wouldn't be that hard for me to go back and update. But at the
Same as the
time I
number of
left, I
Tonys.
was number 9 on the co-hosts in terms of number of episodes hosted, and I think Tony was right behind me, and he probably passed me before he resigned. So now I got to take my number 9 spot back.
I'm going to go all the way to Leo's record. I think he's the top host.
Joe Ressington was still ahead of me. Now, Joe and Leo have passed Joe Ressington.
By one episode,
Joe's still going.
wasn't it? Well, I meant on mintCast, I guess.
No, our Joe is still going ahead of Joe Ressington.
Oh, okay.
But Leo, I think, went 1 episode over and quit.
Yeah.
So
That's what I
let's
remember
bring
him
on
saying.
Joe Ressington to overtake Leo.
Take his spot back, yeah. I don't think he cares. Joe's making money now.
He's a
Life goes
professional
busy
Linux
after
podcaster.
overtaking.
And I think he's got 3 shows now. 4. Plus, I think he's still doing some editing for one other show on Jupiter.
Yeah. I think he's got 2.5 admins, Late Night Linux, Linux After Dark, Linux Extra.
Which I
Okay,
think
Joe,
they
give
just
me 2
renamed to
minutes.
something else.
I'll just switch
Yeah.
over to a more stable kernel because the PC is heating up.
Okay.
It's almost like this hopping before the show.
No, I am on Mint. I'm just changing the kernel.
Oh, you're on
Well,
Linux?
people, we're 10 minutes late getting started, and we don't even have everyone here yet.
Just give me 2 minutes. It will be a quick switch, hopefully, with Mint.
We got no picture on you, Norbit.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
There he is.
So yeah, I'm back on Pulse and my global mute is working, but now Audacity is acting up. Wait, it is working. Okay, then never mind.
So,
I
Joe,
think
you moved
podcast
ahead of
will
Joe
work.
Ressington on the host list. Who do you come up to next, or is anyone even keeping track of that anymore?
I haven't been watching, but I know like the next is like what, Rob and I'm never going to catch up to Rob.
Oh, no one's going to catch Rob. Rob is number one. There are a few people between him and Joe Ressington. I don't remember the spreadsheet. And
My
Joe said
goal
he was
was,
going to keep it up.
yeah, my goal was to beat Joe Rez, so we're good.
You did, yeah.
So it would really suck if he came back on the show then. And just kept going and
Well, as long
going.
as Joe's here, he's not going to pass Joe.
Oh,
Boy, my teeth do not sound like they're staying in place.
you sound great, Moss.
My sibilants are not sibiling. I really should work at being a voice actor. I've got a lot of things I can do and just never tried to market it.
Oh, now Audacity ain't working.
Aye,
Ay.
aye. Watch stream.
But
Well,
that
my
means
Audacity is ready to
Blah,
go.
blah, blah. Now it's working.
Actually, I probably need to turn my mic down a little bit. There we go. It was getting a little too high to that red line. Yeah.
I guess I better get my headphones on. That way I'm not recording you guys too.
I should probably look at my levels as well. It doesn't seem to be peaking.
Sound a lot better than Nishant.
Well, I have this microphone for almost 6 years. It was around 100.
I'm supposed to be able to
Doors.
read that, Joe?
I don't think it's necessary to watch the stream. I'm just looking at the show notes in the browser.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do that because that's too small for me to read.
Yeah, definitely use your own browser to view the show notes, because I might jump around a little bit depending on what's going on, or
So how do
open a link.
Okay.
That reminds me. Is there a way to stop it from moving around when you're editing it, and somebody else is editing the same time?
Well,
Nope.
just don't edit the same line.
Ask Joe how often I
It just
freaked him out editing something he's
I used to have to yell at Moss on the stream, because he would be editing my show notes while I was reading them.
I'm sorry, it ain't funny.
Yeah,
It's a little-
It was hilarious.
I did a
sometimes
quick
I-
edit earlier, and I'm going to leave it alone. Okay.
I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest, and I think I was doing that last week, and either nobody noticed or
It is raining here pretty hard, so I hope we don't lose power. But as far as I know, everything I have plugged in is plugged in through a UPS, although the UPS in here is pretty tiny.
Wait, we don't have either of the Joshes today.
No Josh. I guess we're just not going to be able to Josh around.
This is the non-Josh cast.
Did Josh Thacker say he couldn't make it today? I thought he was going to be on.
Yesterday he said that he was going to skip this one because I'm not sure he said he wanted to do something, but also that he said there was a high chance of there being a lot of people on the show, and
yeah.
to keep it more manageable. But I think there's 4 of us, which is just the perfect amount.
Perfect
Too
for
many
the editor.
editing. Oh, speak of the devil.
There's the devil.
No, but here's hombre numero 5. Oh, not cinque, cinco? Cinco.
Ah,
I'm mixing up my languages here.
Still it's the same, but it's a bit cooler now, Joe.
yeah. You need to turn
5.1
up your mic
kernel.
volume, Nishant.
How much?
Which
lot.
kernel did you switch to? From which one to which kernel did you switch?
5.15 to 5.13, which was stock with Mint.
That's better.
That sounds better. That sounds a lot better.
Well, should we go?
Wait 1 minute. Okay. Good
All
to
right.
go.
So we have me, Norbert, Nishant, Bill, and Moss.
What's with the space? Norbert.
I'm neither Verested nor Bert.
It's a play on words. All right.
That's what I live for.
All right. Moss, do you want to do the Tony bit?
Yeah, sure. Let's get everyone ready on Audacity.
Yes,
we
Mark.
do.
Yes.
I do 3, 2, 1. Record.
Yep.
We
Oh, no,
run
wait, I
that
have
for
to
some
plug
number of
my-
seconds. How many seconds do we need? Tony always did
20.
25, but I think we only need 15.
The longer the better, but 20 should be.
Okay.
Let me
Okay,
know.
And then we do the 3, 2, 1, 0 for the sync.
Okay, how to mute the mic in Mint?
You can
There
set
should
it as
be-
a key combination.
Yeah. But if you have a either a desktop or a laptop, it's a desktop, right?
Laptop.
Then make sure that there's two microphones then, the internal one and the one you plugged in. Make sure that the default mic is the one you plugged in, otherwise it will just toggle the internal mic, which is the problem I had initially.
Okay, never mind. I'll just manage.
Okay, well there is a keystroke combination. Where is that, Joe?
Under
Administration.
keyboard. So if you hit your super
Yeah, just
key
look
and
up
type keyboard, and then you bring up shortcuts in there.
And then you just click on the lack of a thing for mute mic.
And
It
pick
says-
one.
Make a keystroke.
It says not assigned yet.
Then you're going to pick one.
Double click on the binding and then pick something, whatever.
Double click on the right hand column. Just in case he didn't know what a binding was.
Okay, done.
I should be using Super M for muting, but I just use Super D because it's easier to reach with one hand.
Well, I've got a super on the right side, so super
Oh,
M is
that's
easy.
that I don't have somehow. But there's
I've
a,
got
there's
Never
a,
had a super on the right side.
but I don't have an FN key that I never use. Maybe I should. Maybe I could map that to something.
I use
Whatever.
Alt Z.
Okay, guys, it's 3:18, 3:19. The show
It's
starts at 3.
9:19 here.
Yeah, well, show starts
Yes.
at 9 where you are. Boy, my tongue is not working too well. Come on. Ah.
You should
Okay,
recompile it.
everyone ready? Audacity? 3, 2, 1, record.
Yep. Sorry.
That should be close enough.
Yep.
Ready for the syncing?
I was born ready.
Oh yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Zero.
Oh,
I was wondering, should we start the recording on re or chord? Because the stress is on chord, so I assumed it was always record.
For that one,
Record.
as long as you get it close, it's fine. The 3,
The
2, 1,
zero is
0.
what matters.
Yeah, we want it to match up as well as possible.
Mm.
Okay, guys, we have a show.
Over to me.
Over to you, Joe.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
And now here's Joe.
Okay. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. Hello, everyone. I'm Joe.
I'm neither Verested nor Bert. Tishan.
Can't hear you, Nishant. You use
like he
you,
found that
use
switch.
your mute key.
I told you everything would go perfectly now.
Still can't hear you, Nishant. You got that hotkey set for your mute. Go ahead and try it again.
Oh,
There you go.
There.
now a permanent Linux user, Nishant. Too much cap.
And Bill is trying to come up with a line.
Oh, coming to you straight from home. I'm Bill.
And the return of Moss.
This is episode 378.
That was awful.
Do we want to take it from the top?
Yes.
I
Okay.
mean, that's good for bloopers.
First off, where's this order? What order are we going by with the names here?
The ones that are in the show notes.
Oh, the one in yellow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Alright.
what I was.
Feel free to-
Should fill it out.
Go ahead.
Should I turn off push to talk on Discord? It's annoying.
Yeah, if you're going to use a hot mute, then turn off your push to talk.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, you're working.
We're going to take it from the beginning over to me.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm kind of fond of imperfect greetings, but we can do it again.
We can do it a little less imperfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'll work.
it has a charm.
All right. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. Hello, everyone. I'm Joe.
I'm not. I'm neither well rested nor Bert.
Now a permanent Linux user, Nishant.
And coming to you live on my new system, this is Bill.
And the return of Moss.
This is episode 378. This is episode 378.5. Recorded on Sunday, the 9th of January. Livestream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, Facebook, or post directly at mintcast.org. First up in the news, Mint 20.3 Una is released. Pipewire has a new release. Solus co-lead resigns, and more. In security, Linux kernel updates fix vulnerabilities. Ryzen mobile CPUs and Pluton security. Then in our wanderings, and it's not filled out. Then in our wanderings, I talk about the HBR New Year's show. Norbert watched a new series. Bill has been on the grind with cold temperatures. Nishant did a build of Serenity OS. And Moss is back. And then in our innards section, we're discussing our alternatives to Mint. If we have to pick, absolutely have to pick an alternative to Mint, what's our choices? If it just goes away. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions. And in the news, Moss.
Mint 20.3 Una is out. Mint 20.3 introduces a brand new X app called Thingy, which is a document manager. It gives you quick access to your favorite and recently opened documents and keeps track of your reading progress. Mint 20.3 features an updated look and feel with larger title bar options, rounded corners, a cleaner theme, and support for dark mode. The title bars were previously quite small, so they made them rounder with bigger buttons to make the desktop look more pleasant and generous. The hover zone around the icons was also widened to make it easier to press the buttons. Accent colors and feature colors were removed on some of the widgets, and the base color was changed to a brighter shade of gray in order to make the default Mint Y theme more pleasant. Mint 20.3 also features full dark mode support and takes advantage of this to give the terminal and multimedia apps a distinctive look. Applications that ship with dark mode by default: Celluloid, Hypnotics, XViewer, Pix, and GNOME Terminal. Pipewire 0.3.43 is released with many fixes. From Phoronix, this release includes fixes and other compatibility improvements, particularly around the jack also pulse audio handling. Some of the changes include Flatpak apps can now remove links again, many fixes to the pulse audio server code, including lower memory usage and possible crash fixes. Quantum and rate changes are now applied immediately when the driver is idle. The ALSA code now allows multi-rate handling by default. The ALSA code also has improved latency for USB devices. Pulse Audio server code should improve handling of more than 32 audio channels.
I wonder how long we'll be in this transition phase, where if you have to replace Pulse Audio with Pipewire, you have to start a Pulse Audio server via Pipewire. So it's essentially a drop-in replacement because every application is still expecting you to have a Pulse Audio server. So that's what Pipewire provides. It's kind of a workaround.
Solus Linux co-lead resigns, joins Serpent OS, and plans to fork Budgie under a new organization. From its FOSS, 4 years ago, the creator of the Solus distribution, Ike Doherty, left and handed over the project to other developers due to some personal reasons. Recently, on January 1st, 2022, Joshua Strobel, the main developer of Budgie and the co-lead of Solus, announced that he was leaving the Solus project. Here is what he mentions in his announcement, quote, "To summarize why I'm resigning from Solus, I have attempted to raise a wide range of issues which affect the ability to contribute to Solus, both for myself and others in the community. I want to be clear, I haven't been a perfect leader, like at all. It has been a learning experience like everything else, and over the last couple of years, I've genuinely tried to be more open to feedback, proposals, change, and so on. Sometimes I have been impatient. Sometimes I didn't take feedback to heart. I am only human," end quote. Joshua also announced that he's joining Ike to work on Serpent OS. He will continue working on the Budgie desktop, which he forked to form a new organization called Buddies of Budgie, inviting Ubuntu Budgie, Endeavour OS, and other developers to be the partners. The development for the Budgie 10 series will continue, and you should also expect the EFL-based Budgie 11 in the future.
He opened a discussion on the new GitHub page titled "Make Budgie 10 Fly Again," and I took the opportunity to write him my suggestion, which is a feature I've been missing from Budgie, is the ability to set the color of the panel independent from the theme, because I theme I've been using on XFC, where I can just override the panel color with the pitch black the way I like it, has a weird, very transparent color on Budgie. So I've been trying out Budgie on my desktop, but this little detail that the panel is not, it's a weird color, but this theme has the same with GNOME. So if anyone is using Budgie 10, which will apparently still be maintained for many years, hopefully, feel free to go to the GitHub and put in your suggestions.
I think it's kind of funny that he moved over to the Serpent OS project when Ike really dumped the project, not in his lap, but just dumped it. And he was the one that ran in and picked it up and had to get all the details worked out. So for him to then embrace Ike at this point, he must have done some serious forgiveness.
Yeah, well, we don't know if he was ever mad at Ike for leaving. I mean, it is, a high stress position, and Ike had other things going on, and I don't think that's the first time he's done that either. Just leaving Ike, not Joshua, but it's kind of, he did do it for 4
he was
years,
working
maybe
on Clear for a while.
Yeah, he did do for 4 years on Solus. So if he wants something new and that involves jumping over where he's not in charge, then, by all means, let the guy do it.
Okay.
But then why does he say that he's not a perfect leader? Like,
Well,
Haji isn't that bad.
Well,
No,
we don't know what has been going on in the project, you know, what isn't working, what is working, and how much of it he blames on his leadership.
yeah, nobody's a perfect leader, and you're gonna make mistakes, and they wait on him after a while. He wanted to do something else.
But then why leave an organization? That's weird, isn't it?
Not really.
No. But when you're where you're hitting your head against the brick wall all the time, you decide to go around the wall.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just my perception, being only 4 years into the corporate world.
Well, especially in like the corporate world. I mean, 5 years at a position is a long time,
Yeah.
especially nowadays. It's not like in the 70s and, well, earlier, where people did one job their whole life. Now, 5 years is a really, really long time in one position, especially for someone
Yeah,
your age.
I'm still a support engineer at this point of time. But
Yeah,
let's see.
but are you in the same job that you're going to have 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now? Not the same position, the same
Not
job.
this. No. I want to go into like development, like I have told you before. Maybe make a switch, but let's see. But as a person who's in like 4 years in the same position, I really find it weird. So leave a company just because you're not leading it properly. My take on leadership.
Well, he didn't say he wasn't leading it properly. He said he wasn't a perfect leader, and that's splitting hairs there. But
Uh,
Okay.
I tried to keep the quotes short, so I trimmed out some parts that people can you can read the full quotes in the article or the original sources. He did mention that he had reported or signaled about some bugs that he so there were some bugs that he reported to the other developers, and for months nothing was done about them. I'm not following Solo's development at all, so I cannot say how uh, what exactly was going on, but he did mention something like this.
Okay. KDE gets a 2022 roadmap, Plasma Wayland to shine, updated Breeze icons.
If all goes well for KDE this year, I'm definitely gonna move to Plasma. It has been one of my favorite desktop environments in the Linux world.
Okay, from Veronix, KDE developer Nate Graham has published the 2022 roadmap for what he sees as the major undertakings this year for the desktop environment. His KDE 2021 roadmap was successful around better fingerprint support, improved Plasma Wayland session, a kickoff replacement, reflowing text in console, and more, all panned out. The new 2022 roadmap includes the Wayland session can completely replace the X11 session. There have been countless bug fixes to the KDE Plasma Wayland session in recent times, and other work to bring up the KDE Wayland support. Plus, there is now NVIDIA support via the GBM path. Overhauling the Breeze icon set, improving multi-monitor support, inertial touchpad scrolling within Qt Quick software, and the 15-minute bug initiative being started by Nate Graham. He's hoping to fix many small bugs and paper cuts. This class of bugs would be small issues easily encountered by users within roughly 15 minutes of basic usage of the desktop.
So I see a great potential for Plasma going forward with the Wayland
I
thing.
see Wayland. I put news into show notes. I'm a simple person.
No,
I'm a simple man.
actually, Plasma is one of my favorite desktop environments apart from GNOME. So I have used Plasma and definitely it's going in the right direction so far.
It's interesting. I kind of like Plasma, but I don't really like the K applications. For example, their partition manager. I always just end up going back to gparted and the GNOME disks. I use both of those.
That's perfectly fine, Norbert. Even I go back to gparted most of the time.
Yeah.
I think gparted just has so much more of the mind share that partition manager doesn't get the right amount of development, I think. And it's a little harder. It's a little bit more nebulous to use, but it does the same things. It's just in a different way, and some of it's not quite as easy to understand. As
And
far as
if
the
Well,
you,
Wayland, I was going to say, as far as the Wayland thing goes, I was using Plasma quite happily on Wayland until I started doing podcasting, and then I had to give it up for OBS Studio. So OBS is a obstinate holdout for some reason for getting their stuff working on Wayland.
So
I've been using
on
Plasma.
NVIDIA.
I've been
on
using
NVIDIA.
Plasma.
Sorry.
Or
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I've been using Plasma since 2002, before it was Plasma, and it was nice in versions 2 and 3. I stopped using it for version 4, and I never went back to Plasma until 5 was very well developed.
have you tried
So-
the 25th anniversary Plasma? Mark,
Have I tried which?
25th anniversary edition.
No.
How is it different?
I don't usually go to Plasma these days. I'm happy with Mate, and if I want something that really works nicely, I load Bodhi and use Moksha.
I have
More on
used,
that later.
True.
I have used Plasma 25th anniversary, and it was like smooth experience for me. Would love to
They've
go
got
back
it
to
down.
Plasma someday.
Plasma's got a way, and I don't really understand the mechanics of it, but it's got a way of scaling itself to work with the hardware
Exactly,
that's
Bill.
installed on.
Exactly,
it-
Bill. That's correct.
Yeah,
Well, in
and
some cases, it's really hard to find the switches and where to move things. Maybe
Yeah.
if you've been using it for a while, you can. But every time I go back to it, I find something else I have to learn that is easy to do in Mate.
I think their defaults needs whoever makes the decisions in that project as to the defaults, and this is nothing new. Some of their choices are a little, I don't know. They're not quite what most people would choose to do, and yeah, for a new user, it's a bit daunting to go into the system settings and
Which
find
they
this thing.
The system settings, which they should revamp. I think what they
Yeah.
should do. I think what they should do is have a simple mode and an expert mode. Like, for example, how a lot of BIOS settings menus do. And the default should be the simple mode that is more similar to like the GNOME settings where they don't have many options. And there should be a toggle laptop where you can switch to the expert mode, which is more like the current one. So everyone would be happy. People who want a simple solution and people who want to have advanced controls.
I think they could start by just. I think most people install a system. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people install a system, and if it's set up right out of the box, they leave it as is. And if it's not, it gets judged based on that. You know, if I got to go in right away and change a bunch of stuff just because it's just obtuse from the beginning, then that can stir up like a bad attitude towards the distro in general.
What is the best beginner friendly distro that uses Plasma in your opinion?
Farron OS.
Farron's got a good implementation. I think, Kubuntu, when Mint was doing it, they were doing it really well. I think the Kubuntu at least goes in and changes the theme to be something a little bit less bright and off-putting, and then they turn off that stupid single-click thing that is on by default. That's probably like the number one thing for most people is that single-click. If you line up 100 people, you might get 2 or 3 that prefer that, but for some reason they just refuse to believe that people don't like that.
I'm a single clicker. I have been
Yeah.
from the beginning.
It's just a matter
Shall we
of
move
what
on?
you get used to.
Yes, Mark.
Yeah.
Enlightenment 0.25 desktop environment release from 9 to 5 Linux. The new version introduces a flat look to match the new flat theme, a new gesture recognition bindings for touchpads, fingerprint support in desk lock via the libfprint library, a new tool to configure fingerprints, a new binding action that lets users switch profiles, and a palette editor and selector tool to help you set up custom colors. Among other noteworthy changes, Enlightenment 0.25 comes with XDG current desktop set by default, more consistent fonts across EFL and non-EFL apps, as well as various under-the-hood performance improvements to reduce power usage and make Enlightenment faster. Let me state that there is a beta of Bodhi out now using E25 if you'd like to try it out on a nice, pretty easy system.
Is there an official Enlightenment flavor of body?
It's official Enlightenment E25 with modifications to make it run all the Bodhi apps.
Okay, so I tried Bodhi Linux and it's totally green and I really enjoyed
It's
it.
very green. It's really green.
I love green. I'm a green guy, you know.
It's a dark green though. I liked it too. I like how
Well, you
you
can always
you
change
start
it.
up.
If you get the app pack version, there are dozens of themes, and those themes change the background, they change the icons, they change
I have
everything,
the
and
app
they
pack
have some
version.
beautiful ones. Well,
No,
then run
I
through your
like it.
themes, see if you like it. But
Okay.
I
anyhow,
like how
like I
fast
say,
it
there
is.
Sorry.
there is
Enlight-
there is the
uh,
new beta.
Enlightenment itself, looking at the screenshot from this release, was the second time I was really impressed by Enlightenment. Because the first time I tried it, it felt very weird. It felt kind of niche. But the second time I tried it, I got more of an impression of it being very unique. But I was a bit unsure about going back to the Budgie desktop topic about Budgie 11 being based on EFL. But looking at the new themes, and not just this new flat theme for Enlightenment, even the previous version, how it looked, I have a very good feeling about Budgie being based on EFL. And if that happens, and the more desktops, and if the more desktops are based on EFL, the more support it will get. Because right now, whenever I want to theme my GTK desktop, I just go and get GTK themes. The same for Qt. But I'm not even aware of on how to do theming on some like Enlightenment. But if Joshua Strobel is very confident in EFL, then I trust in his choices.
Well, it's very simple. There are only 3 libraries out there that you can make a desktop on without making your own from scratch. So you've got the Qt framework, you've got the GTK framework, and you've got EFL. And everyone's been ignoring EFL until GNOME started really messing with the GTK.
They did sorry, the EFL thing did a good job. They came out as an alternative to GTK, I think, or Qt.
Well, I have been using Enlightenment E17 back in, I think, 2012 with MacPup, which was a version of Puppy Linux. And I loved it, and they came out with 5.20, they came out with 5.25, and then they didn't make any more. And I was looking around, I could not get Bodhi 3 to work. I tried again with Bodhi 4, could not get it to work. And then with Bodhi 5, I've been copacetic ever since. And I'm now, I have to disclose I am currently considered to be on the Bodhi team.
Really?
Congratulations, Mas.
Yeah.
I haven't done much, but I've been managing the Discord group, and I've been pushing out things, and I helped find them another mirror. And
That's
I
the
talk a lot.
smallest thing you can contribute ever to any operating system.
And I do donate to them.
Yeah, so you've been doing some bodybuilding, haven't you?
That's Joe's job.
No, I mean bodybuilding.
Oh, okay, joke. Yes.
Bodybuilding. Love it.
Okay,
I
so
was trying to do a very bad British accent to be able to fit the word body into my sentence.
so technically this means even okay, we'll talk about it later when I come
Yes.
to my bi-weekly wanderings.
Okay.
Because Serenity OS, I'm part of the Serenity OS developers team.
I haven't heard of Serenity Os yet.
Yeah, I'll tell you once I talk about my bi-weekly
Yeah.
wandering and how I build it.
Yeah, but all in all, I have a newfound interest in both body and enlightenment. So this will be an interesting year. Although, just the finishing comment for Wayland. Although reflecting a bit back on the plasma use, if I'm not able to run a full Wayland session on my NVIDIA desktop by the end of the year, I will be a bit disappointed. Mainly in the NVIDIA developers.
No, they can do it, man.
Yep.
They
So,
definitely can do it now.
They could have done it a long time ago. I think
No, but
they've
with
just
Pop putting more cooperation
pressure.
between Pop and NVIDIA developers, I think it'll go further.
And also, I'm pretty sure that NVIDIA doesn't have to open source the drivers to make it work properly. They just have to put in the
no.
effort.
Yeah.
But you're dealing
Okay.
with a niche of a niche there, because Linux already by itself is such a niche to everybody. Anyway, go
Well,
ahead,
let's
Moss.
talk about a different niche.
All right.
Steam on Linux ended 2021 at 1.11% market share. From Phoronix.
Hey,
That's
This
pretty
summer,
good.
Steam on Linux recrossed the 1.0% threshold after being under 1.0% for years. In November, Steam on Linux hit 1.16% as a recent multi-year high for the operating system. In December, it dipped by 0.05% down to 1.11. Meanwhile, year over year for December 2020, Steam on Linux was around a 0.57 market share. For December 2019, no, for 2020, and I'm reading this wrong. Meanwhile, year over year for December 2020, Steam on Linux was around a 0.57 market share, and for December 2019 was at 0.67%. It will be interesting to see how Steam on Linux market share as a percentage plays out over the course of 2022 with the Steam Deck units beginning to ship, they think.
Hopefully, yeah,
Okay.
in February.
So pretty much.
I'm excited about this development. If gaming ever works on Linux properly, switching over to Linux, no holds barred.
Yeah.
I want
And
them to ship in February so I can have mine, but I don't want them to ship so that I can make my prediction.
Well,
So
I kind of want them to ship, but I want a large percentage of them to be, broken quickly, so I can purchase them at a
See why
lower
I'm
price
used.
and fix them.
So here, right now, we can see Arch
Joey-
Linux, right? With the Steam Deck, will the Arch Linux share go up?
Joe, you are
No.
the
Yes.
lawful evil person in the room.
Yes, I can agree with that, and yes, I do catch D&D references. Thank you.
D&D?
Dungeons and Dragons,
Oh, okay.
the neutrality
haven't-
system, or
Oh, you mean
the
We
alignment
don't have
system.
time for that.
Okay, yeah,
drag and
Okay.
drop? Drag and drop?
yeah, drag and drop. That's what it is.
There you go.
So Arch
Yeah,
Linux,
Nishant just rolled a 1 on his check.
But yes, it is going to if they, and they should have pretty good sales on the Steam Deck, and it will have an impact, even if it's a small one, on the overall percentage of the number of devices
no,
with Arch Linux.
what I think is, yeah. So Arch Linux share can go up, right, in this list.
Mhm.
What do you think? Will it go all the way to the top, replacing Ubuntu LTS?
Oh no.
Can I just appreciate the fact that during the last year, market share of Linux on Steam went almost doubled.
Exactly, with the Proton developments and everything.
Yes, but even without the Steam Deck, it doubled.
Yes, it's just because of the Proton development, Norbert.
Yep.
Well,
I know,
do you
I
think
know.
though that it's the Steam Deck and all the interest that all the spin
Bill,
and news around that's driving up people's interest in
Bill,
gaming on Linux?
first thing, it's the Proton compatibility layer, which
Yeah,
is
sure.
allowing more games.
Yes,
to
but
be
that's
played
what
on
I
Linux.
was referring to, but didn't phrase it properly.
I think overall though, that's only going to get us halfway there because my kids upstairs play 2 or 3 games on Steam, and then all the rest of them are on Xbox Game Pass. So getting Steam to work is one thing, but it's
Okay.
not. We can't say that gaming is good on Linux now. Okay, we can't say that we're all
Okay,
the way there.
well,
until,
that there's a big difference between the fight on Linux and Windows on PC gaming, and then the whole gaming on console versus gaming on PC.
well, no, I mean they play it through the Xbox app on the PC.
Right, but that requires Windows, and also requires you to have. I think it requires you to actually have an Xbox, and then the games
We
on
have
the
to have
Xbox.
an Xbox account.
No, after Windows 8 or Windows 10, you can play Xbox games on PC. Windows.
Once you own it, you can play it on any Windows machine, and
So-
that's huge.
It's still PC gaming then, but it's actual Xbox
Yeah.
games. That's actually kind of
Mhm.
cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
Now,
that, and that's not
and
even
j-
mentioning sorry. And that's not even mentioning how there are like dozens of launchers
Yeah.
that all and that each and every one of those have to support Linux natively. And if
Yeah.
they don't, people just try to get them to work through Wine or Proton, the launchers, and then launch the games through those. So it's a bodging.
Yeah, the security
They,
launchers do make things difficult. Always
Yes.
have.
Exactly.
time to just
Okay.
go to goodoldgames.com and download something from 20 years ago and just play it. Simple times.
There's some good games from
DOS
20
days, you
years
mean?
ago.
yeah, I enjoy those.
Oh, one of my favorite games is from 22 years ago, 21.
Which one?
The Rayman 2. Rayman 2. It's a platform. I grew up on platformers. Was never really into shooters, so
Check out Arcanum. Arcanum
The
of
original,
Steamworks and Magic.
will do.
the
Okay.
original Ghost Recon is my favorite game, which came out in 2002.
Hmm?
The Ghost Recon, original Ghost Recon by
Mm.
Ubisoft in 2002.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. Next up is our
Okay, my turn.
security update. Who's going to take the security update?
I might do because I formatted this article and I took out the names of a bunch of security issues, the codes of those issues to make it more readable.
Okay,
But
we'll split it up, and you
so
can do the first one, and Nishant can do the second.
oh, because the second one is Ryzen. Okay, so new Ubuntu, yeah, okay, new Ubuntu Linux kernel security updates fix 9 vulnerabilities. Patch now. It's from 9 to 5 Linux. Canonical's Ubuntu kernel team published a new Linux kernel security updates to address a number of security vulnerabilities. They say they address 9 of them, but I counted 10 in the article. So first one is a security flaw affecting all aforementioned. Oh, I should have reworded it. The first one. Oh, don't mind. I just. The first one is a security flaw affecting multiple Ubuntu releases and discovered by Navad Amit in Linux kernel's huge TLB implementation. This leak could allow a local attacker to alter data from other processes that use huge pages. What is huge? Okay, I will do another take on it. Sorry. Okay,
This is
so the
so
first one
technical.
is sorry.
This is
Okay,
so
so the first
technical.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
it was even more technical even before I rephrase it. So okay, so the first one is new Ubuntu Linux kernel security updates fix 9 vulnerabilities. It's from 9 to 5 Linux. Canonical's Ubuntu kernel team published a new Linux kernel security update to address a number of security vulnerabilities. The first one is a security flaw affecting multiple Ubuntu releases. The first one is a security flaw affecting multiple Ubuntu releases and discovered by Nadav Amit in Linux kernel's huge TLB implementation. This leak could allow a local attacker to alter data from other processes that use huge pages. Also, for all supported Ubuntu releases, the new kernel security updates patch an integer overflow discovered in the eBPF implementation, a race condition discovered in the ISDN-C API implementation, and the flow discovered in the TIPC protocol implementation. These three could allow privileged local. Sorry. These three could allow privileged local attackers to cause a denial of service, system crash, or execute arbitrary code. Furthermore, a race condition discovered in Linux kernel's overlay file system, overlayfs implementation, which could allow a local attacker to cause a denial of service, system crash. A use after free vulnerability discovered in the NFC subsystem, I almost read NFT, which could allow a local attacker to cause a denial of service, system crash, or execute arbitrary code. A flaw discovered in the KVM implementation for Power 8 processors that could allow an attacker in a guest virtual machine to crash the host OS by causing a denial of service. A security issue discovered in the TIPC protocol implementation, which would allow an attacker to either crash the system by causing a denial of service or possibly execute arbitrary code. A critical flaw that should be really I should have just skipped all this and say that there's a new update your kernel. Should I finish reading this?
Yes.
If you want.
Okay. Okay. Where was I? Number 9, right? A critical flaw that could allow an attacker to bypass UEFI secure boot restrictions because the Linux kernel failed to properly enforce certain types of entries in the secure boot, certain types of entries in the secure boot forbidden signature database, aka DBX, protection mechanism, and finally a race condition discovered in the Linux kernels in the and finally a race condition discovered in Linux kernels in the timer implementation, which could allow a privileged attacker to cause a denial of service. Canonical urges all Ubuntu users affected by these security vulnerabilities to update their installations to the new kernel versions available in the main software repositories as soon as possible. You can also read in the article itself the detailed list of which of these updates are relevant for which Ubuntu versions running which kernel versions. But reading all of that felt like when you were watching the news and see people being in crashes, it was kind of technical and in a way, I guess it's
Norbert,
Yes?
suggestion. Always just summarize it into small lines. It'll help you
Yes.
to
Yep.
cover every point quickly.
Okay. I will figure this out. I might just re-record it after the show. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Well,
no problem.
My question is, I'm wondering whether this affects Pop! OS, because I know Pop! OS has its own kernels maintained in their own repos. So do these patches get downstream to there as well?
Could be,
Does-
but we would have to check with the pop devs on this
But I
one.
guess it definitely applies to Mint, for example, or Zorin.
Uh,
I mean,
could
I
be.
always
I'm
try
not
to.
sure about Mint and Zorin, but
Mint
pop
is
could
just my Mint is following the Ubuntu LTS kernel, so it is probably relevant for Mint.
be. Yeah. Okay,
ge-
so now
Yeah, general advice: always keep up with kernel security updates.
no, actually, yeah, I will start keeping up. I've like never encountered such things before, but
I mean, a
now
bunch
I
of these are could be exploited by a local attacker, so I assume that means access to the computer physically.
the one where it's, can you scroll up to the article? The one where it said that virtual machine can be used to.
You can scroll up as well. I'm not the one sharing the screen.
Oh,
Just look at
I'm
the
not.
notes in your browser.
The one where it says that KVM implementation, that's a very dangerous one, number 7,
Ah,
according to me.
for Power 8 processors, but isn't that Power PC? Or am I?
Power
What is
8
Power 8?
architecture is different, maybe.
So it doesn't affect x64 or x86 processors.
Yeah, but security-wise, it's a very dangerous thing. And if it ever comes into x86, it could be a disaster.
Does
That's what
A
Ubuntu
Intel.
flaw
support?
is a flaw is a flaw.
Does Ubuntu support Power PC architecture?
Yeah, it used to. No,
But
Ubuntu,
does it
no.
still?
No.
So what is Power 8? Okay, but never mind. Let's just go to the next one.
Okay, now my turn for this one. AMD Ryzen 6000 series mobile CPU to feature Microsoft Pluton security chip. From Foronix. Back in 2020, Microsoft announced their Pluton security chip that would be coming to feature AMD, Intel, and Qualcomm
Qualcomm.
processors. Pluton security processor is designed to improve the system security under Windows, and now we find out that AMD's forthcoming Ryzen 6000 Rembrandt processor will be the first featuring this feature. Back to the Microsoft 2020 announcement, they talked up cloud security and all the benefits, albeit only for Windows PC with no mention of Linux. Of Pluton's functionality, Microsoft sums it up as, so Pluton design removes the potential for communication channel to be attacked by building security directly into the CPU. which means this could also be a new TPM which they're introducing. Windows PC using the Pluton architecture will first emulate a TPM that works with the existing TPM specifications, which will allow customers to immediately benefit from enhanced security for Windows features that rely on TPMs like BitLocker and System Guard. So this will be used to protect credentials, user identities, encryption key, and personal data. None of this can be removed from Pluton even if an attacker has installed malware or a complete physical possession of the PC.
And all that for Windows.
Yes, and we also haven't seen any patches yet from Microsoft or AMD yet. So what I think this could mean is like Windows 11 running on TPM PCs which are not supported yet.
But what I think Microsoft is thinking, step 1, get people to buy new hardware for Windows 11. Step 2, make it harder to use anything else on the hardware. Step 3, profit.
No, this Norbert, from what I understood, this will be used only in the enterprise laptops, the one which your office gives you, because there only they use BitLocker or System Guard in most of the corporations. That's
But
what I think.
I recently looked at the new work laptop of someone I know with a fresh install of Windows 11. The first time I tried Windows 11, and there were 86 gigabytes, and there were 80 plus gigabytes use space, and there was 80 plus gigabytes use space on the system drive. Just
What was
by
the total space?
I'm not sure how much actual software it was there installed on it, but half of that might be Windows itself.
No, well,
Okay, so
if Windows is going to end up taking up like 80 gigs of space, then there's going to be a whole lot more HP streams available on the market. And they're definitely,
Therefore, maybe-
not the greatest laptops in the world, but they'll run Linux just fine.
Here's another thing. If you do a update from one copy or from one iteration of Windows to another, Windows will create a
Windows adult
directory.
folder. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is like a whole nother complete copy of the file system inside that directory, just to make sure that you don't delete anything that you might not know that you needed, and
It's like-
people don't know to go and delete that.
It's like
When I did this,
snapshotting, but
kind
not
of, yeah,
good. Yeah, but
it's just
but
backing up, but they don't make it real clear that they've done that backup. You just kind of have to know, I guess.
Windows.
I installed Windows 11 fresh on this. I'll get to that in a little bit. This one here, when I was setting it up yesterday, fresh install of Windows 11 is
How much
about
space did it take?
11 gig.
Wait, how?
Fresh install is 11 gigs.
Fresh, yeah.
If you install something software, some software, it will increase eventually with the updates as well.
But
So I can
Windows 10 is like 30 plus gigabytes. How is it Windows 11 only 10 or so?
tell you exactly here.
Depends on how bloated it is.
I mean, I just used the media creation tool from Microsoft website and just did a Windows 10 home installation. It was 30 plus gigabytes.
I don't know then. For me, Windows 10 when it came stock was 60-70 gigabytes, and then I did a full clean install from the ISO just to make it debloat of Asus software.
I mean,
Yeah,
to be
I'm
fair,
showing.
to be fair with
Go
today's storage sizes, it's not really a problem, but
No, I'm on a 512 gigabyte, so I hope you
Yeah.
understand how much storage is precious right
yeah.
on this hardware.
So I'm showing. It's not telling me exactly. I don't have G parted on here, but GNOME Disk is reporting on a 392 gigabyte drive. Only 7.6% of that is full. So that's 7.6% of 392 gig.
96. How many percent?
300. Oh wait, no, actually it does say. Wow, it's 362 gig free of 392 gig.
So
So
30
much?
30
20
gigabytes
gigabytes.
it's
approximately.
30. So 30 gig now.
Yeah,
But
That sounds right.
I've installed Steam and Firefox
Did you install any games from Steam by any chance?
Not yet. No, and I would have put that on another drive anyway, but
Okay.
that's with Steam and some other stuff. So that's still, I mean,
It's safe
It's
to
not
say
yet.
that it's more than 25 then.
yeah,
And
yeah, I suppose. I'm not sure. how
meanwhile, a
big
new
Fire-
installation of Fedora is like 6 to 7 gigabytes.
Oh, well, yeah,
Okay, that's
always
we're
been
still
the case.
moving past the topic here, so let's
sorry.
wrap this up and move on.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is for I think mainly enterprise users, as per the BitLocker and System Guard implementation.
For now.
So yeah, for now.
Okay, next
Okay.
up is our bi-weekly wanderings. First up in our bi-weekly wanderings is me. I got on the HPR New Year show for several hours. It was fun getting to talk to some other Linux nerds. This year, my kids did not get on, but I did have some really good conversations while on the New Year's show. It should get posted in the next couple of months, sectioned out. For easy consumption, I highly recommend listening to it. There's some really fun technical stuff there. I was able to fix 2 Skull Candy Hesh 3s. The ones that my kids were wearing constantly had developed faults on the band all the way across. I thought I was going to have to do a full crossband replacement, but that was not the case. I pulled out my multimeter and tested continuity, and it turns out that all I needed to do was redo the solder joints on the far side of each headset. Quick fix for each of them. And my guess is it's because of the replacement Y headset hookups. They free spin, so my kids were spinning them around, and it probably just pulled the cable a little bit and disconnected the solder, and just needed to redo it, and they were good to go. My laptop started having problems after a kernel update, and it got annoying to have to go back and pick up the old kernel every time to get the computer started. So I decided to start fresh, nuke and pave. After a clean install, I was able to very quickly get the new drivers for NVIDIA installed and hybrid mode working just the way that I wanted. Much faster than the last time I did this a couple of years ago without all the hoop jumping that was needed back then. And yeah, super simple compared to what it was even 3 years ago. Now, the MSI keyboard control to handle the color of the backlight was very annoying to set up, and that has not received an update in a very long time. I did need to install NPM and Node.js and then get the actual command line interface program running. And it is very annoying, but the hardest part is actually getting it running at startup. So I don't have that red color backlight. And I'm still working on that. I don't remember how I fixed it last time. I'm going to have to dig into it more. I did try cron, and I tried rc.local, and I tried the built-in startup programs, and none of those has worked yet. So I will get back to that. I still have my home drive from the previous setup that I need to remap to, but I'm not sure whether it's a good idea or not. I don't want any of my old configs to mess up my new install, although I guess that would be easy enough to switch back as long as I can get to the command line. So I'll probably give that a try sometime this week. I watched a bunch of the CES coverage. I'm less interested in the VR stuff than I used to be. VR is great, I guess, if you're, single and don't have a bunch of other people in your house that you want to be able to, talk to while doing other things. The laptop...
Or allocate space too.
Or allocate space to, yeah. The laptop and gaming laptop space seems very interesting with a bunch of 14-inch laptops that look very cool, including an Alienware 14-inch, slim laptop that looks awesome. But I don't know, Alienware and slim gaming laptop just don't seem to go together. The Dell Xps 13 Plus is another interesting looking device that I'll never be able to afford. And yes, it looks interesting, but it also has that Mac style function key setup, touch function key setup at the top. So I don't know about that one either. But still interesting. Seemed to be some push for electric vehicles, but considering the prices, I may have to stick with gas guzzlers for many years to come. I mean, basically everybody had an electric vehicle there, and yeah, it's kind of cool. But when you're talking your starting price for an electric vehicle truck is $100,000, I'm not paying that. Okay, I was able to pick up a squat rack for a very low price with a pull-up bar and safety catches, basically everything I wanted, almost. But it did need some work to get the pull pins working correctly, and I still have one left to fix. All I had to do was really take those pins apart and put the springs back into place correctly. I'm going to keep a close eye on them to see if the springs start coming off again. The pull pins are actually hard to get to source online because the company doesn't make them anymore. I ordered one that looks right, and in the meantime, I'm using a heavyweight bolt, and it's just one of the safety catches, which would rarely get used. Today, yesterday, I added in a 3D printed part to hold that bolt correctly into place so it's not slipping back. That worked out pretty well. I would have preferred a power cage, but those are expensive, and I was able to get this and what I hope is the correct pin for $20 a piece, so $40 total, as opposed to the cheapest power cage I can find is like $250. Hopefully my thrifting doesn't get me killed. I have put 270 pounds on there with no issues. The highest I'll probably get it up to for now is probably going to be like 290 or 295. I did bench 270 on there a couple of times yesterday, and that's really not as much as it sounds. But, I was streaming to the rest of the team at the time just to, give it a test and see how well it worked. And I did some other 3D printing as well. My chair here, I redid the cup holder, so now it's much more streamlined. It's a little bit lower. It's not interfering with the movement of the table, and it is holding the cup holder that I printed is holding my camera, and I really like the newer setup. It fits into the cup holder a lot better. There's a lot less tolerance there for it to move around, and it really keeps my camera a lot steadier than the old one did. And yeah, that's really all I've been up to lately. Norbert, what have you been doing?
Exams. So Nishant, what have you been up to? Oh, Nishant is not here. Well, so it is the middle of the exam season, and well, to be fair, I don't have that many exams this semester. I've already completed one, and I think there's only 2 left. But in the meantime, I watched the Arcane series with a friend, the series that is based on the League of Legends game, and I'm just going to say that it's probably one of the best things that came out from any studio last year. Throughout the past couple of decades, we've seen people's opinion and mentality towards animation go from animation is just for kids to animation is just for kids and some more adult sitcoms like The Simpsons to okay, animation can be taken very seriously, and I think this show is pretty much a combination of all of that. Because what's important to note about animation is that animation is not a genre. Animation is a medium, and there's really no, and there's so you can tell pretty much any story. So you can tell pretty much any story through animation. And one of the highlights for me in the Arcane series was how people's faces were animated. I'm not sure how much face capturing was involved, but this is probably the most detailed. But this show has probably the most detailed. But this show had probably the most detailed facial animations that I've ever seen in any animated movie or TV show. And all around the entire thing was and and altogether the entire thing was very strong and very captivating. It's really good at setting a mood. It was really good at setting a mood through either music or or its design. Um, it has a very unique art style, uh, incorporating 3D with 2D, where all of the environment and all of the people, the characters are 3D, but all the particle animations and fluid animations are 2D. And I'm not sure if they did and I'm not sure if they did some 3D rendering, and I'm not sure if they did that through some 3D rendering and shading it to look like 2D, or they actually did the fluid animation and the particles by hand, frame by frame. And the fact that I couldn't tell makes it very impressive. Because CGI is the most impressive when you cannot tell if it's CGI or not. And what I really and so it was so Riot Games, just Riot Games, the company behind League of Legends, was heavily involved. Riot Games, the company behind League of Legends, was heavily involved. And while I have never played League of Legends, and neither do I plan to play it after watching this, it was still very enjoyable, and it doesn't really require any background knowledge of the games whatsoever, because as far as I'm aware, there's a bunch of lore to the games, but most of that is the background stories of the characters. So the way I understand it, they are trying to establish a more coherent canon to that universe through this series. And I really didn't expect them to drop the F-bomb multiple times throughout this series. So that alone, I mean, swearing is not funny. That's what I want to say. So this sort of goes hand in hand with how being
And we are back to streaming correctly. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, but it's all my fault. Okay, but I'm not going to have a camera. I don't know why, but every time I turn on my camera, all of Discord locks up. So no camera for Joe. Not the whole computer, but I definitely turned off Discord several times.
and binary distros. So because of this and updates taking so long to compile, I don't think I'm the target audience. I don't think I'm in the target audience for Gen 2. And if I'm looking for insight in how Linux-based systems generally work, maybe I should try doing a Linux from scratch installation sometime in the near future instead. Probably not in the near future, but I definitely do plan to try Linux from scratch. Especially since I heard one of my friends mention that they actually did one. So I hope to gain some more insights from that.
Just a
And
heads up
yep,
on Linux from scratch, you will have only a handbook.
I know. I downloaded it, 200 pages or so.
Yeah,
I will
not an
have to
easy
do
task.
some I will have to do some mental preparation. And that's it for me. So Moss, what have you been up to these past months, I should say?
Well, I'm back, I think. Let's see if I can keep it up. I missed mintCast, but 2020 was, to say the least, a difficult year. From when I was here last, I have a new T540 ThinkPad. I got my wife a T560. I bought a refurbished ThinkCenter Tiny M700. And then I swapped the Kudu 3 to my wife for the T560. She likes that one better. The whole house, except for the now retired T430 and the Z800, is running i7s at least 6th generation. Well, the T540 is 4th generation, so that's wrong. George Dosher of Tech Plus Coffee also got me a Lenovo SmartTab M8. I paid him back, but he paid $29 at a Walmart in, I forgot the town in Florida. Anyhow, I did pay him back, including postage. So except for the Kudu, we are all Lenovo here. I spent Thursday night upgrading all my active machines to Mint 20.3 Mate, and all three of my computers feature Bodhi 6. The T540p and the T560 also have Arco Linux Mate. My next job is to sell the T430, which may not be in top shape. Suzanne was having some problems with it. And the HP Z800 workstation, and maybe the T540p. It will be hard to sell the Z800 other than locally, as it will cost a lot to ship. It's a heavy monster.
Okay, so
This.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You go ahead.
No, so Moss, how was your experience with Arco Linux?
I'm really liking Arco Linux. You'll find out, well, I guess before this episode comes out, we'll be doing another episode of Distro Hoppers Digest, which was my next thing. And I will be reviewing Arco Linux for that show.
Okay.
It's very, very comfortable. It was easy to install. It's easy to run. They use PAMAC for all the updating, and it's very nicely integrated and easy to use. And they say that Arco Linux is designed to start you out as a beginner and move you into being a full Arch user. But I haven't seen any prompting to move forward yet, and I really like the way it runs as a beginner.
Okay.
I don't think it explicitly prompts you. It's just they have sort of an upgrade plan. So I think it's rather like when you feel ready to upgrade, you just do the next stage.
Okay. Well, Distro Hoppers Digest continues. We're averaging over 800 downloads per episode. We'll be recording episode 29 this Wednesday with Tony and Dale. I'm still doing Full Circle Weekly News, which I took over from Leo early last year. Full Circle Weekly News has not missed a single week since I took over, and I'll be recording a new episode of Distro Hoppers on Wednesday. I said that already. Whoopee. Full Circle Weekly News is fun because the guy who collects the news articles is in South Africa. Then he sends me the text file, and I edit it drastically to make sure it'll fit, because I'm not allowed more than 10 minutes. And then when I record it, I have to make sure it's under 10 minutes with all the lead-ins and everything. And then I ship it to Ronnie in Scotland, and he uploads it and sends it out.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very international program.
So, any place for one more contributor to Linux
I
news?
see what the reason Eric gets the articles is he also submits those articles to the magazine. So
Oh,
anything
okay.
I have to cut out from my show is still going to be reported in the magazine.
Oh, okay. I'm not aware of magazine, but like links to different
It's
news articles.
fullcirclemagazine.org.
Oh, okay.
I did spend a bit of time on the New Year's Eve show on HPR, like Joe did. Had a bit of fun there. Well,
Oh,
that's about it for me. What?
I forgot to add that even I was there on HBR show, if you remember.
Well, let's get Bill going here. What's
Yeah.
up? What's up with you, Bill?
Oh, gee whiz. It's been a long week. This week has been a bit of a grind with the cold temperatures here in northern Indiana. On Monday, I loaded copper wire. Oh, I'm a truck driver by trade, for anybody that doesn't know. My week started here in Fort Wayne, where I loaded a load of copper. It's coiled rod that they make wire out of, and we take that to different wire mills around. And this place I went on Monday, delivered Tuesday morning, was about halfway between Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia. And then I reloaded in Philadelphia, took that to a place about, I don't know, it was about 10 miles south of Dayton, Ohio. Delivered that, came back home, and then I did 2 back-to-back runs out to Pittsburgh and back. Meanwhile, I had ordered a new desktop computer. It got delivered on Tuesday, and it's a HP Pavilion desktop PC with the AMD Ryzen 7 5700G. It got delivered on Tuesday, and I didn't get a chance to start setting it up until yesterday. And I started it up, and somebody's editing my thing as I speak. That's lovely. I started up with the included NVMe drive, and the thing that happens when you start up a brand new computer that comes with Windows 11, and it asks you to sign in with your Microsoft ID, Windows, upon your behest, will share your email with all of the vendors that have put their crapware on the system alongside Windows. So now I'm
Totally
getting
agree.
emails.
Totally agree. They send emails, but um, once you finish, I'll tell you a workaround to this, Bill.
Yeah, I'm sure if I would have went into the little privacy settings when I was first setting it up, I probably could have told it not to do that. But
Um,
I was really just wanting to get it set up so that I could download the USB creation tool and then make a clean installer for Windows 11, because I was replacing that NVMe with a Samsung 980 Pro 500 gig, which I did, and then I reinstalled Windows, as I said before. Nice, clean, even a clean install of Windows, in my opinion, comes with a lot of crap that I'll never use, like Microsoft 365 and Skype and all that stuff. But anyway, in addition to that NVMe, I've got a 500 gig 950 Evo Samsung SSD. I added that, and I formatted that to ButterFS, because that's a file system that both Windows and Linux can access. Windows, there's a GitHub project out there, ButterFS implementation for Windows, and it works really well. And you've got all of the copy on write and compression options
It's
working
interesting.
really well.
I didn't know about that. But
Yeah, it's
reference on
on Git.
Windows. It's interesting.
it's called? Gosh, WinButterFS, I think. But it's out there, and it's an MSI download, and it works really well. And I've got it installed on 2 machines upstairs. I wanted something that I could use between the two, the Windows and the Linux, but I didn't want to use the NTFS because NTFS, I know it's getting better, but it's always going to have trouble with being able to assign different permissions to different directories within the same file system. That's not something Microsoft properly supports. So, and ButterFS, in my opinion, is just far better. Okay, so after installing Windows 11, I shrunk the system partition, which is just basically the biggest. I think when you install any copy of Windows, if you just do their default installation, it creates several partitions that do God knows what. But I took the biggest one, the system partition, and I shrunk that down to 11. Well, I shrunk it down to allow 100 gigabytes to install Linux on, and installed Linux Mint Cinnamon on that. A couple of things about that for people that are interested in dual booting. A couple of things you want to do is disable fast boot in the power options for Windows, and that would be true for anything Windows 8 and above. And then there is a registry setting you need to add to set Windows to use UTC instead of local time, and that works fine. And there's instructions as well as you can copy and paste right from the Arch Wiki. There's a page I linked to here in the show notes, and it's working great. I've not had problems with either Linux or Windows on here. I chose Cinnamon. I'm not sure. I think, because I was using Mint back when the whole drama started about the time Windows 8 came out, and Microsoft went to the Windows 8. Microsoft went to the Metro interface, and then GNOME thought that was such a great idea, so they came out with GNOME 3. And that was all great, and everybody loved it, and we all got along just fine with it, right? And so it caused, as far as the history of Mint goes, that caused a little bit of internal drama because they really didn't know what to do with that, because a lot of their stuff that they've been running on top of GNOME 2 was just not going to work on GNOME 3, so they had to throw a lot of things together, and it didn't really work real well. Mint 12 was shaky, and they had to kind of come up with a few things, and they came up with Cinnamon. I'm not sure if Mate is... It felt at the time like Mate came around and it was available almost immediately on Mint, but you didn't see anybody else using it. I think you could get it for anything like Arch or whatever, but I don't remember anybody offering it as a flavor. But no, there wasn't an Ubuntu flavor of Mate at the time.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if it was in the
Martin
repositories or
Wimpress
not.
had to do with that.
Yeah.
If Martin hadn't done it, Mate would still not be that good of a desktop. Martin has done so much for that desktop.
Oh, he has.
Mas, I was talking about Ubuntu Mate flavor.
Yeah,
well,
that didn't
Martin
exist
started
at the
working
time.
on it and then created the Mate flavor.
Oh, okay.
And then it became official after that. And then Martin became an official canonical employee after that.
Oh,
As far as I can remember, in those days, you only had the flagship Ubuntu. And then, and about that time, that's when Ubuntu switched over to Unity. And Unity was one of those things that everybody hated until it went away, and GNOME 40 came out, and everybody's like loving Unity all over again. That's
Well,
but
Putting in a
well,
plug for Ubuntu Unity.
but in
Yeah.
retrospect, in retrospect, Unity was quite good, I think.
I agree with you. I really do, especially for laptops when you have limited screen real estate.
Yep.
You know, I think it was efficient and I think it worked really well. I think people just are always going to have a problem when change is forced upon them, you know,
yeah, Bill,
when
that's right.
because you start up your computer one day and all of a sudden your entire desktop has changed and you didn't do that. And I think that's what jars some people's experience.
Moss,
Mm.
I think you know the young developer of Ubuntu Unity.
Yes, I do. He even sent me an individual Happy New Year's message. I was very pleased with that. If an 11-year-old can develop a Ubuntu flavor, you can too. He was
Yes,
9 when he
exactly.
started doing Linux development. His first distro was Linux from scratch. A 9-year-old kid doing Linux from scratch. Come on now, that's got to
And
be
that too,
beyond.
for me, personal achievement is that he's from my country.
Yep. He lives in New Delhi.
Oh, I should meet him then. I also live in New Delhi.
Yeah,
That is cool.
his mother has been supporting his habit, so to speak. But she's got to be really proud of him.
Yeah,
He's
I
got
totally
5
understand.
distros he's managing now. But the main one is Ubuntu Unity.
Is he
Maybe
also
if I meet him and like if I interact with him, I'll just put it in the show notes for that week's show if we
You
have
should
a
get
show.
an audio interview with him.
yeah,
Yeah,
you should
sure,
invite him on the show.
Yeah.
sure, I'll try
Well, this is kind of past his bedtime.
Yeah.
He is still an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
that.
Oh wait, yeah, it's early morning and it's like 4 a.m. in
Oh,
India.
What time is it, Nishant?
3:15 a.m.
Oh,
at
but
this
that was
point.
one point.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're not going to get Rudra on the show.
Is
No,
he also involved in the development
I
of
can.
Unity X?
Yes, the same team on
Ah.
Yes,
Unity 7.
Unity Lumiri, as they're calling it. He has a
Also,
Lumiri version in development. He also has Ubuntu Unity for Raspberry Pi, and he has one other Raspberry Pi distro.
That's another journey, the Raspberry Pi. But anyway,
sorry,
Okay.
sorry, Moz, did you say that the guy who forked and created the Mate was the same guy who created Ubuntu Mate?
Yes.
No, the creation
no.
of Mate was in Brazil and Argentina,
Mm.
but Martin
Oh, that
Wimpress
explains the
is the
name.
one who upgraded it and made it a special thing, much more than it was.
It
Martin
felt
Wimpress
at the
is
time
very-
it almost felt like a Mint project when it first came out because all of a sudden here it showed up on Mint and I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be crazy popular because
Oh,
every
it's okay. Never mind.
I
Continue.
It-
should get myself some mate. I haven't drank mate in over a year.
If you
Ah.
listen to the Jupiter Broadcasting
Bum, bum,
shows,
bum.
you'll hear Martin come on every now and again. He's a friend of the show.
oh, I do, yeah.
So Martin Wimpress is the guy who left Canonical recently?
He was
From
the
what I know?
He
desktop
did leave recently, yes.
yeah, he was
Okay.
the desktop team leader for
Well, first
what,
he
a
worked on
year?
Ubuntu Mate, then he became a Canonical employee, and Ubuntu Mate became official. And then Mark Johnson left as desktop manager, and they made Martin the guy, and that was a great move. And then after
No, it was not Mark. It wasn't Mark.
Wasn't
it was
Mark?
the other guy. The guy from Late Night Linux, the English one.
well, I thought Mark was English. I don't know.
yeah,
Brain is getting old. Yeah.
But for Ishan,
At
this
any
is
rate, Martin became the desktop manager, and he did that for at least 2 years before he moved on to another project outside of Canonical.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
well.
So anyway,
We're steering away from the topics quite a bit, but I just got some feedback the other day on Telegram from Dylan and Dale that they quite enjoyed the previous wanderings, and that was one where we also diverged from our main topics quite a lot as well. But that kind of turns the wanderings into several smaller innards, which is kind of interesting, and I quite like it. Not to say that I'm not saying that we should completely diverge from the topic. So we should we should probably pick up the pace.
And now back to Bill.
Back to Bill. Back to live action. Okay, so I'm gonna skip over the Nitrix part because it's really much to do about nothing at this point. Okay, so I have looked at it some more. It's an interesting implementation of Plasma at this point. With you can log into the cask interface. I don't know if it doesn't respond to clicks because it's expecting a tablet sort of input going on there or what, but it just doesn't. Some of the clicks just doesn't work. But I would like to see more on that, and I'll be interested as they keep developing it. Anyway, at Moss's behest, which is to say that I responded to some of his passionate upholdings of Bodhi by installing it and taking a good look at it, and I really like it. Okay, so Bodhi is, for anybody that doesn't know, Bodhi is based on Ubuntu 1804, or at least the version that I downloaded and installed. And it features the Moksha desktop, which is a fork of E17. Is that correct? And I'm really digging the lightweight system. I'm enjoying the amazing responsiveness. And one thing that always amazes me is how fast a distro can get a browser up and running. And
You
even the
literally
light one.
can take some modules out if you don't use them and get down to 100 megabytes of memory usage.
That's fantastic. But you click
It's
on
about
Chromium.
320 out of the box, and yeah,
it was almost instantaneous how fast it starts Chromium up, and Firefox was not. I mean, I only spun it up once, and that took maybe 2 seconds. But I gotta imagine that that's because it's got to, it's got to create the config files in your home directory, and then fire up the cache and all that stuff too. So maybe, opening it up in the future won't take as long. One thing I appreciate also is the direction of the cursor. I remember trying E17 some years back, and their cursors were by default pointing towards the left, and that was a little jarring because reasons.
yeah, people didn't like Unity because the closing boxes were on the left instead of the right, and that
But
was
see,
the main problem.
I understood the reason behind that, because that fed into how well it used the real estate on the screen. Because it would have mangled things up to put them on the right when you maximized Windows. And with this thing on Enlightenment, that just felt like something they were doing just to be different. But as I said, I appreciate it. I appreciate that Moksha, or at least by default, upon installing the cursor is facing the right way. As I said, Chromium spins up almost instantly, and applications like lighter applications, just file managers and text editors and things like that, are absolutely instantaneous. And that's on a virtual machine. That was really impressive. And I feel like it looks modern. Sometimes lightweight distributions, lightweight desktops sacrifice a little bit of a modern look and feel to give you some more of that speed and reaction, and it feels like Moksha is giving you a modern interface, but gives you all the speed that you would expect out of a lightweight distribution. So overall, I believe my experience with Bodhi was a positive one.
I wanted to point out to our listeners that Bill was apparently using Bodhi 5 or 5.1, because the current version, Bodhi 6, is based on Ubuntu 20.04.
He has
Well,
mentioned
then-
it in the notes, I believe.
Okay. Oh yeah, I did type that there. Bodhi 5, Bodhi 6 is. Yeah, I was questioning myself there.
No, you
Any-
weren't. I questioned you for you.
Anyway. So yeah, like I said, I installed Mint on this machine, and I remember as I was typing out the rest of my notes earlier today, I was noting how enjoyable of an experience it was to use Cinnamon on this particular machine. It's a nice sort of homecoming experience, I think, after a lot of years of being away from Mint, just for the sake of having more control of my machine. Coming back to something that's just works out of the box is kind of a nice experience. It was a lot less to set up. So, anyway, that's enough of my rambling. Now on to you, Nishant.
Nothing much in the past 2 weeks. Actually, only one I got on the Serenity OS development team. Tried building Serenity OS. It's a good combination of Unix and Windows 95 style. It's basically a tribute to the 1990s Linux, Unix, and 1990s GUI and 2000s Unix, Linux. So it's basically what they did is they take idea from the community and they are building it block by block. Like whatever idea they have, just implement it and it will form the OS.
That makes you think, when did proper Unix go away? Or did it even go away at all?
It didn't go away till about, I think, 2005 or 2006.
Hmm.
I think they even use Unix right now in form of FreeBSD.
There must be some companies somewhere in the world that still uses
So I'm yet to
Unix.
find out what kernel are they using in Serenity OS, but it seems to be a custom Unix kernel based on some Unix, from what I have learned. And Ryzen 5 5th gen made quick work of the 4500 modules which it needed to compile the source code. So it was like basically 10 minutes and the Serenity OS would be running in a QEMU environment, QEMU environment. And it truly feels like Windows 3.1 from the 1990s.
Is
Um,
this similar to React OS as in trying to be binary compatible with
no,
something, or
no,
is it just
it's independent project started by Andrea Killing, who left his job at Apple to focus fully on this project.
Mm. Now
He
looking at the
was a
screenshots, it feels really like it feels a lot like Windows 95.
yeah. So it's like tribute to the 1990s graphical user interface with a bit of 2000 Nix systems. If you go to their website at serenityos.org. And also, I celebrated my birthday by traveling from Delhi to Kolkata, 17 hours.
Happy
17
birthday.
hours. Oh, it's belated now. Joe, it's belated
Yeah.
birthday, but
I, I
thank you.
I will probably butcher this sentence, but Jan Madin Mubarak.
Thank you. That's correct. Okay, so traveling from Delhi to Kolkata and then getting stuck in a lockdown, not lockdown as per se, but the restrictions around COVID Omicron variant due to the highest positivity rate in the second city which I am in right now. And so making Linux permanent as a daily driver is on my next 2 weeks target without changing to Windows once.
I'm
If
looking at
that
this
is
Serenity. I remember now, Serenity. They were talking to the developer of this on the Ubuntu podcast a while back. This is one guy had some time off from work, came up with
Andrea
the
Killing,
entire OS and
was his
including
name?
all the toolkits. I don't remember his name, but they had him on the show and they were talking about this, and the guy came up with the entire toolkit that it's based on and everything like that. because
Yes, even a custom kernel build.
yeah, he wrote all this. So this guy's clearly a genius, right?
Yeah, so basically what Andrea says that uh, take whatever wishes you had of how a operating system should work and then put it into Serenity OS. That's how we build it. Community contributions are important in this OS. How you would have imagined Windows 3.1 to look at the, today, in case you
This
haven't
guy,
used Windows 3.1.
yeah,
What is the
That's
a little more
primary
color
goal?
than what?
so
What is
it's
the
an interest.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, Norbert. What is
Sorry?
the query?
What is the primary goal for Serenity OS use case wise?
It's fun, like make it fun to use with
Hmm.
whatever the developers or the community has imagined it to be. Like
So it's
imagination wise, what
mm,
you thought Windows 3.1 should have been in 1990s.
so it's a developer's playground. So it's
Yes,
more like getting a
developers
car.
playground.
So it's more like getting a car to work on it rather than to drive it.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's a fun little OS though.
Yeah.
I would
It's nice.
I would totally attest it. But right now they are working towards the bare metal of it so that you can install it. It'll take some time to be able to get ISO out of it. Still under active development, I would say. It's fun to code for as well. From the Discord server, which I have seen so far, they're very welcoming to any new contributors. So yes, and making Linux permanent is on my next 2 weeks target. If I don't install Windows even one, I would definitely call it a success in the next podcast episode. That's about it from me.
Okay, if that's everything, let's move on to the Linux innards.
Interesting part of this episode.
Yes, the best part of this episode.
Okay, Norbert, take us away.
Hold on. Okay, so the Linux innards this time a little bit different. We're supposing our main distro and what our backups would be if our main distro went away. A couple other rules involved, but let's not get too far into it. Norbert?
Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, so the idea was that you take your distro, your daily driver that you use the most, and come up with what you would move to if it just went away. It would stop being developed. And then do that, and then do the same thing with the next distro, and then have a list where you have distros in order of preference, in order which the order in which you would move to them if the first one or the second one was to go away. And it was it was I it was it was surprisingly hard for me to choose the first one because if I look back to my past year, I think I on my desktop machine I used Void and Arch. I think I used Void and Arch about the same amount. I think I spent about the same time on Void and Arch, but if I just think about my desktop, then I spend the most time by far on Void Linux on this one. So, and I'm currently driving Void as well right now. But in the past 2 months, I think I've used Arch and Void around probably equally. But I went with Void because but I went with Void because I eventually moved back to Void. I still keep my Arch installation because I like to have two distros at the same time. So if something was to happen to one of them, I have a backup system, and I do recommend this to people who like to tinker with or even distro help a lot. Always have two installations ready to go. And I also like Void because I like building my own system since it makes it feel more personal. It
Mhm.
gives you a bit more satisfaction when you install a base system and you install your window manager or desktop environment of choice, which for me is XFCE. And Void also plays surprisingly well with NVIDIA, because if it wasn't for a specific NVIDIA related issue that was present during maybe July of last year, I would probably stuck with Arch. But I started looking for something else when those NVIDIA when those problems with NVIDIA came around. And Void works really well with Arch. it doesn't have the very latest NVIDIA drivers, which would be 495 right now, but it does have the latest stable branch. But it's up to date on the latest. But it's up to date on the stable branch, which is. But it's up to date on the stable branch, which is currently 470, and I haven't really had any graphics related issues on this system. I also really appreciate the effect. I also really appreciate how it is an Encurses-based installer, similar to Debian and Slackware, which I really like. I prefer it over either a graphical installer or a fully command line-based installer. And I do respect how it gives me the choice to not install Grub as a bootloader, because I already have Refined on my system, and I wouldn't need Grub anyway. And because of that, I wouldn't really need Grub anyway. So I like distros that give me. So this little detail of it. Allowing you to leave out Grub from the installation. I think it shows how much. I think it shows a degree of freedom that Void is giving the user. And even though the repos are way smaller than the Arch's repos, and I'm not talking about the UR, I'm talking about the base Arch repos, which I think are around 14,000 packages. Void only has around 8,000 packages, but interestingly, it has almost everything I need, and even stuff that isn't in either the Arch or Debian repos like uLauncher. Then I came to the realization that while Debian has a lot of packages that people use to get work done, Void has a lot of packages that center around user experience and the way people like to tweak their desktop. And since I moved from Brave to Firefox, I pretty much have all the packages natively in the Void repos that I need. Originally, part of the reason why I switched to Void was an experiment, because I wanted to see if I could daily drive a lesser known distro that doesn't have as much support as Arch, and I decided to stick with it until I bump into a problem that forces me to go back to Arch. And I managed to stuck with it, for more than half a year. Well, I do have Arch in dual boot for some stuff, but I would say for 90% of the things I want to do, Void is perfect. And I really like its minimalistic approach and philosophy. But if Void was to go away, I would probably just stick with Arch, because it's another distro that I had very good experience NVIDIA-wise, stability with NVIDIA, in terms of stability on NVIDIA, and it even has the very latest NVIDIA drivers, and it even has the very latest NVIDIA drivers in the repo that is more up to date than Void, and it also has a large community, so it has great support and resources. But if both Void and Arch would go away, these two are almost head to head on my list. Void is just barely above Arch. But if both of them were to go away, I would probably try to move to Fedora, because Fedora also has the latest NVIDIA drivers, which might be the NVIDIA drivers, and that's pretty much the main aspect that I was looking for, having the latest NVIDIA drivers, which made my choice of distros for this topic kind of limited, but it also did make it easier to choose. So Fedora is not fully rolling, but still has very recent. So Fedora is not fully rolling, but it still has very up to date packages, and I kind of like the concept of a semi-rolling distro. It's similar to Debian testing, which is also semi-rolling, but Debian testing has a new major release every 2 years, and Fedora has it every 6 months. I don't think I really have a preference between rolling release distros and semi-rolling distros, because I'm trying to set up my install scripts in a way that it doesn't take a lot of extra work and extra effort to reinstall a system. So I wouldn't even remind having to use a system that I would have to reinstall every 6 months. Maybe that's an over exaggeration, but I don't think any of my systems are 6 months old so far. Uh, because I've been doing some disrupting last year. But another selling point for me, another what was the word I'm looking for? Not selling point, but aspect. Another good aspect. Another ex, another aspect of another sorry. Another, another aspect of Fedora that another aspect of Fedora that, another ex- it's a tongue twister. Another aspect of another aspect of Fedora that really appeals to me. I can't say that. Another aspect of Fedora that really appeals to me is the fact that uh, they have a focus on Wayland, Wayland support and Wayland implementation, and Fedora does have a really good Wayland implementation. Uh, and I'm already using Fedora on my tablet because of how Wayland really works well with touchscreens. So while I haven't really daily driven Fedora at all so far, I've gotten pretty familiar with it, and it also has a lot of soft. And the repos are also fairly large, around 30,000 packages. No, around 20,000 packages, maybe 24. So, but I've actually tried to use Fedora as a daily driver on my desktop, but I had some problems with NVIDIA drivers and OBS. So I'm hoping that Fedora 36 will resolve some of those problems, and if it does, I will give another proper try to Fedora on the desktop. But if Fedora was to go away, I had a bit of a trouble looking for another distro to put on the 4th and 5th places on. I was kind of lost when I was looking for distros to put on my in 4th place on my list. I was thinking I was trying to decide between Pop! OS and OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, because both of them have the latest NVIDIA drivers. Even though Pop! OS is based on Ubuntu, they started maintaining their own versions of the kernel and the NVIDIA drivers. So while on Ubuntu it defaults to 470, even though 495 is already available, Pop! OS, I think it defaults to 490. I think Pop! OS defaults to 495 already.
Yes.
Yes.
With each update to their ISO, they bring out the new NVIDIA
Mm.
drive.
Yes, and that's something that I really appreciate. It seems like System 76 is the. It seems like Pop! OS is a distro that is most focused on NVIDIA stability, which I didn't really expect. I didn't expect myself to pick a. I didn't expect myself to pick an Ubuntu basis to have on the list, because I would usually just go with Debian. But I realized Debian, while I use Debian on my laptop, maybe Debian is not the best if you want to do media production and video recording and audio recording, because Debian is just now trying to transition to uh, PyPire, for example. So maybe Pop! OS would be the best choice after Fedora
And
for me. I do have OpenSUSE Tumbleweed in the 5th spot because it is very similar to Fedora. But it's a rolling release, but also a tested rolling release distro. I tried it for a couple of weeks. I really liked it. Their package management system takes some getting used to, and their package availability is not as good as Fedora's, but I still relax. But I do like but I do like some of the but I do like some of the software and defaults that are specific to Tumbleweed. For example, their installer and the YAST suite and the YAST and the YAST utility and the YAST utilities. So
in my
I don't.
opinion, OpenSUSE is more of a server distro compared to a desktop one.
Yes, but that's a leap, OpenSUSE leap. But I think OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure if I specified, but I'm specifically talking about Tumbleweed. But I think Tumbleweed was created to give people a rolling release. But I think Tumbleweed is a rolling release distro was created specifically for the desktop, because I'm not sure if people would want to use a rolling release distro like this on the server, because it seems to get
Correct. Correct.
because from the brief time I tried it, it seemed like it got way bigger and way more updates than Arch. It got updates more frequently than Arch, and Arch isn't particularly suitable for the server either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should ask that company which ran Arch on its server and then it crashed.
Jupyter.
Oh,
Yeah. So
I
so
don't
yeah,
think Jupiter's Arch crashed. I think it ran successfully until they decided to do something else.
oh yes,
I thi-
that's what I meant, Moss.
I
They
think so.
decided to upgrade or update it, and then it crashed.
I
No,
think
it
it was
crashed
the
because of a hardware issue. And he
Oh,
was
okay.
out of town. He couldn't. He knew it was having some issues, and that's why they're making kind of a big deal out of
Mhm.
replacing it with this new server that one of their listeners donated to them. But it did end up being a hardware issue. They made use of that Arch server for quite some time.
I just remember that they're actually planning on having Tumbleweed on their new server,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Well, they had like a contest or something where they asked their listeners, to vote on what they should do, and it turned out, I don't know if they seemed to indicate that it was gamed somehow, the drawing, but it turned out to be Tumbleweed. So
Yeah, well,
I don't know. I don't think
they've been fans of ButterFS for a while now.
yeah.
But to be fair, there are most of the things on that server in Docker, so the chances of something going wrong with what they use it for, even though they're using a rolling resistor, is significantly lower because of that. But yeah, I feel very strongly about Arch and Void. I feel very strongly about Void and Arch in first and second place. Fedora, if using NVIDIA will become more problem free on Fedora in 36, I will probably feel strong about that as well. And Pop! OS and OpenSUSE, I picked those two. I think I picked those two mostly based on NVIDIA support. And that's my list. So, Moss, how about you?
Hi, my name is Moss, and I'm a distro hopper.
Hi, Moss. Everyone say hi, Moss. It's like an
This
AA meeting.
This means I get a lot of experience with a lot of distros. What I use the most are Bodhi and Mint Mate. So if one went down, I just use the other. I have tried using just about everything, though. If Ubuntu were to go away, that would take Mint and Mate, Mint and Bodhi with it, but LMDE and Bodhi 32-bit are both based on Debian, and it would take a lot for Debian to go down.
And also, I think if Ubuntu went away, then Bodhi 64-bit would probably just rebase on Debian as well.
Probably, since they know how to do it on the 32-bit. But as you'll hear on the next Distro Hoppers Digest, I've found that Arco Linux Mate is just about as comfortable as Mint. I am really liking it. I am not having any problems. It's a slightly different way of running, but PAMAC is very comfortable. And lastly, I do not understand why so many people like Fedora. That would be the absolute last distro I would use regularly. I avoided it for many, many years, and then Josh Hawk sent me a all-in-one tablet, a 2-in-1 tablet by Dell that had Fedora on it, and I took it off 2 or 3 times before I decided to just leave it off.
Was it running GNOME?
Yeah.
You should try their XFCE spin.
Well, I really don't care for XFCE, but I haven't tried the more current versions of it.
I think they also have Mate.
The last time I used XFCE was on MX19, and it was pretty ugly then. But then they did an upgrade of XFCE, and I haven't used anything that used that upgrade since.
Well, XFCE, it's still kind of ugly, but if you put a nice GTK theme on it, it can do wonders.
Well, everyone seems to want to move away from GTK, so I don't know about that. Anyhow,
oh, okay, sorry.
I'm done with my list here.
There is a Mate Compis spin of Fedora, which you could check out.
Yeah, I've tried some of the community spins and they didn't always load. I don't know. I've had the same problem with Manjaro. The community spins don't load the way that the regular spins do. Anyhow, I'm all done. Let's let Joe talk to us about his stuff.
Well, this one was actually pretty hard for me to pick stuff because I'm not much of a distro hopper these days. I mostly just, stick with Mint. And, well, so if you've been following the show, you'll know this is all stuff that I've used while on the show because I know these, I picked them. Now, my first pick after Mint is Fedora. It's still easy to use and has all the documentation I could probably want. Lots of people have done write-ups on all the things you could possibly want to do with Fedora, and that's one of the reasons that I like it. Generally, I'm not that big of a GNOME fan, but I found it usable when I was using it. And yes, I would have to change my workflow a little bit, but I found that with Fedora, I don't really so much mind. My next pick would be MX. It's a lightweight Debian-based, and it's not as easy to use, in my opinion, as some of the other ones. It does offer a 32-bit version, which is really good for older devices. And that is where I have my experience with MX, is a couple of 32-bit machines that I was able to set up and use really well. After MX, my next choice is probably going to be Garuda because of customizability. It's a rolling release, makes application installation very easy for, an Arch, and has a healthy amount of desktop choices right out of the box. And it's real easy to switch between them to install another one or basically anything using that the pop-up that is there right at the beginning. Very similar to Endeavor OS. It's a lightweight Arch, extremely lightweight Arch, but the Welcome app makes it very usable and easy to set up. And now both of those I've used because, we were doing a review on them on the mintCast just to see how they work. And both of those I've installed on my tablets and enjoyed them quite a lot. Now, my next choice was going to be PinGuy, but evidently PinGuy hasn't gotten an update in like 3 years, which tells you how long it's been since I last used PinGuy. So then I have to go way back to Kubuntu. It's basically the heavyweight of my choices. It can be fun to use, and it does look great. Very little tweaking needed to get it set up the way that I want. And it's also kind of, where I started in Linux. I started out in Kubuntu. Now, KDE Plasma is very, very different than when I first started with Kubuntu. But I still like it, and yeah, that would be my final choice, and that did not take me long to get through at all.
Guess, Joe, we both started on Ubuntu in our Linux careers.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to start with an Ubuntu flavor of some kind, just because, if you do a search for Linux, I think Ubuntu comes up at the top of the list.
I had the LTS 14.04 and it used to run Unity, I think, at that point of time, or some other desktop.
Oof, I think
Yeah, it did have Unity. It went full-time Unity in 1204, which was when I stopped using it for that reason.
Yeah, I think
okay.
I think
Unity
I was
wouldn't run on the machine I had.
installing Kubuntu in, I don't know, like 2010. Long time
That's
ago.
old.
Yeah.
That's old. And I would definitely love to go back to Kubuntu just because of the Plasma implementation.
Yeah. Well, it was before Plasma. But one of the reasons that I like Kubuntu, and I've gone back to it a couple of times, is KDE Connect works better in Kubuntu than it does in any other distro. You get the full
Yes, because
functionality out of KDE Connect.
it is made for KDE Plasma, I believe.
Exactly.
It's made by the KDE people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so my turn. So my current daily driver starting from today is Linux Mint Cinnamon. It is a great stable desktop distribution which I enjoy using it. Before I was little bit um, scared to come on Linux Mint because I thought it wouldn't work well. But after replacing a kernel or two, it works great with the AMD hardware, which I have, giving me about 4 to 5 hours in NVIDIA performance mode, and in power saving mode, about 6 to 7 hours of battery life.
That's impressive.
It's real impressive.
Yeah. What kernels are you using it? What kernel are you using it on it?
Right now, I'm using the generic 5.13 kernel, which gives me about 4 to 5 hours on NVIDIA performance. The one which comes with the Edge version of Linux Mint Cinnamon. 5.13 L 5.13 kernel. And the second choice in the list is Ubuntu with Mate desktop environment. Again, the same picture as with Linux Mint Cinnamon. Great battery life on both power saving and NVIDIA performance in Ubuntu Mate. It has TLP enabled by default, inbuilt.
And Ubuntu Mate also has some more specific battery
Tweaks.
improvements stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What about Mint Mate?
I haven't tried Mint Mate. Mint Mate won't have all these enabled. Basically, just the desktop environment, I think. Ubuntu Mate, from what I have experienced, it has already enabled by default. Okay, so third on the list is Arch Linux. If Ubuntu and Mint ever went down, and then Arch would be my third choice to help me customize the system. Very flexibility in installing the system. That's about it for Arch. And coming to the fourth one, it's Fedora because they still have very recent software, including the GNOME desktop environment, and not only GNOME but the other spins. Like if you install the KDE desktop environment from the repositories, it will always be the latest version. Which in case right now, Fedora is running the 25th anniversary edition of Plasma 5.25. If you install the desktop environment from the repositories. And the NVIDIA drivers and kernels also are updated in their respective repositories. And Popper is same reason as Norbert is for the latest NVIDIA drivers and the Cosmic desktop environment. So that's my list.
On to me then.
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
So again, for me, this is kind of difficult for a different reason, just because I've got different uses for the different machines that I run. I've got one I take on the road with me, and that's got to run as lightweight, not only just lightweight as possible, but use the least amount of bandwidth, because I do utilize some. Well, I tether it to my phone to get the internet, and then I wire guard back to the home server back here behind me, and then that goes off to Pi-hole to block all of my ads and other malicious stuff. So for laptops and things, it's got to be Arch, and then for this downstairs big system that I'm on here now with. It's got to be Mint, just so that I know what I'm on about. And the thing about Arch, when I decided I wanted to move on to a more advanced file system to take advantage of snapshotting and using the sub volumes and all that, at the time the only distro that was doing that was OpenSUSE, and I wasn't real sure that I wanted to switch to an RPM based distro, so I learned how the whole thing worked. And at the time, the only other way to get something installed with ButterFS subvolumes was to use Arch and set it all up yourself. So that's what kind of led me down that road. And with Arch, you do have nearly 100% control of your system. You can drop in, replace any subsystem you want with anything else that you want, and you have a reasonable expectation if you've done your diligence and you've learned this thing properly, then you can get it to work, and that's been my experience. The community around it, it is what it is. They've got an expectation that people that come and use Arch are competent users of Linux. They won't come out and say it, but it's quite obvious from the beginning that they really don't want beginners in their ecosystem.
I don't think that's 100% true, because part of it is that the Arch Wiki is a really good resource, and oftentimes they don't turn beginners away, but just strongly suggest to them to read the wiki. It comes off as not wanting to help, but maybe sometimes it's just that they want them to learn to rely on documentation, because if there's good documentation, then it's probably going to be way faster to fix something than asking for help.
I think if you don't have the people skills necessary to convey the fact that, hey, go check out this wiki, and if you don't understand something about it, come back, and because not everybody speaks the language that is spoken on these wikis. They don't always know exactly what. Yeah, I could talk all day about this, but they, a lot of times you're really, really treated like you are somewhere you don't belong. What are you doing here anyway? Did you look in the? Well, yeah, I looked in the wiki. I didn't really understand, and then you kind of get treated like you don't belong there. And I'm not, and that's coming from been using Arch for almost 20 years. And
Right. Any time a new user is told RTFM, they don't feel welcome.
And that's a thing, and you really, and the minute you start treating people that way, especially if they're new to Linux, period, you're going to turn them off to the entire thing, and that's not going to help anybody. But
I remember very well the first and only time I was told to RTFM, but by my Debian user friend. And he did have a point, because I was asking too much. But what's interesting is I've only briefly looked through the installation pages of the Gentoo wiki, but like I said previously, it went into some very basic details as well. And I think the Gentoo wiki is so well worded that someone who is maybe a developer on Windows, has never used Linux, but is tech savvy enough, they could very well install Gentoo as their first distro because of the good documentation and the wiki.
And interestingly enough, that the difference between Arch and Ubuntu in terms of its advanced usership is huge, but the difference between Gentoo and Arch is even bigger, honestly, because Gentoo's claim to fame is being able to compile your own kernel, for crying out loud. So
not
even
only that,
given,
but decide what to include and not include in the kernel or
exactly
anything.
So just that concept alone makes it even more. But given how much more advanced that distribution is, you don't get near the elite sort of attitude that you will on the Arch Wiki. But anyway, that's enough pounding on those poor people, those poor people.
Speaking of Gen 2,
Gen 2.
Yes.
So yeah, if I couldn't get Arch, I suppose I would try to move on to Gen 2 just to see if it was worth. Gen 2 to me has always been kind of interesting, a little bit confusing, just because I never have understood. So the whole concept with Gen 2 is that you can basically whittle this thing down to something that has absolutely nothing more and nothing less than you absolutely need, and that's including the kernel, which is going to save you in terms of disk space and like other types of real estate on your machine.
Mhm.
And that really makes sense if you're going to put it on a machine that has limited resources. But on the other hand, if you put it on a machine that has limited resources, it's going to take a week to run the updates, and even longer perhaps just to get it installed. So it's kind of difficult to understand where the advantage is there, you know. But anyway, go ahead.
Maybe it comes down to the philosophy of when you use a computer, you're not using the operating system, you use other software on your operating system. So the operating system should get out of your way, and maybe it's an extreme form of that. The so having the operating system really get out of your way by not having a bunch of things that you don't use. It's like if you have a software that you use often that maybe does 10 things and you only use 8 of them, then someone might want to compile it in a way that it wouldn't include that extra 2, want to maybe not include that extra 2 features.
It's interesting. I think though academically that might be the case, but the community comes out here and makes podcasts about distributions and the desktops and our experience with the operating system in and of itself. You know, we enjoy these things. Seem to be even today even more interesting to us. You know, I think when it comes down to it's just an absolute control over your system. You know, and a lot of people that use Gen 2 are. I think some of them are there because they can choose System RC over System D or anything else they want, you know, just a drop-in replacement. You can do that with Arch too, but it's not nearly as drop-in as it is on Gen 2. In fact, most of the Arch wiki assumes that you're running System D, and that seems to be a big deal.
I think Debian is another distro where it's easy to switch from System D to something else.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, moving on. If I couldn't get either of those, one distro that used to be kind of interesting to me was called Linux Lite, and it was I think it was based on Ubuntu, and it was a really nice implementation of XFCE, and I would probably I put Linux Lite here, but that was really more of a placeholder because I think I would just kind of bounce around between some of the mid-tier distros that rely on Ubuntu or Debian, just because of the availability of software and how easily I can get. If it's based on Ubuntu, then I can get in-trees CFS support, which is kind of important for the servers that I run and things like that. And the Snap ecosystem. Now, you know, you can run snaps on just about anything if you follow the instructions correctly. But I always appreciate when things just run kind of well out of the box. I think
that's interesting because a lot of people are getting more and more not happy with snaps, and Ubuntu is even totally revamping the snap system right now.
Yeah. But that's them taking action on it, though, right? That's them recognizing that, you know, somebody might be having a problem with their ecosystem and them responding to it. I'm not.
If I can't find a flat pack, I don't use it. It's that simple. It's
To
either a
quote-
Deb, a flat
Yeah.
pack, or nothing.
I am kind of in that order, although I use that Nextcloud Snap for my this server is running 2110 Ubuntu, and that Snap is running my Nextcloud instance, and
But-
it literally takes care of all of the stuff that I don't want to with the Apache server and the MySQL and keeping my SSL certificates up to date. That's all handled, by the Snap team, and they do a lot of work on that stuff, and I appreciate that. Now, there's other ways of installing Nextcloud with Docker images and all that, but you still have to add certain components to that on top to get that running. So there is some of the snaps that aren't directly officially supported by the Snap crafters. They might work, they might not. I don't know. But my experience has been somewhat positive.
To quote a random comment that I've read on Reddit, snaps for the server, flatpaks for the desktop.
And you almost feel like that's how it was originally intended, and then they kind of decided, well, hey, we can use this to install other stuff too, and then...
I'm pretty sure it was. But because the backend of snaps is proprietary, isn't Snapcraft the only place you can get snaps from? Because you mentioned unofficial snaps.
You can make another Snap store. It's just nobody's ever done it, because I don't
System
think...
76 has done it.
Why?
Because they didn't like the fact that the back end was proprietary.
Yeah.
Why would System
Wasn't-
76 go to snaps?
I don't think it's for Pop OS. I'm not sure because Pop OS doesn't have snaps at all.
I don't know anything about it, but I think the reason somebody might, would be because they don't like it to be proprietary. But what's the difference between it being proprietary or being like the GNOME project where, it's open source, but we're not accepting any contributions from anybody whatsoever?
I will point out that I hear things and connect things, and they're not always right, but that's just what popped into my head. So
Okay.
it might not
Pop.
be System 76, but I
Pop.
did hear about
Pop,
somebody.
yeah.
Right on. So anyway, if I couldn't get any of those, I would try OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. Now, OpenSUSE was, like I've said before, they were one of the pioneers in the ButterFS world. They were probably, as far as I'm aware, they were the first distribution to start using ButterFS on their root file system by default. If you just ran the installer in it with all of its default settings, it would use ButterFS, and it would create subvolumes for var, and I think they created one for var and one for home.
I think they create almost like 8 or 10 subvolumes. So
Yeah.
very thorough.
Which is useful if you're gonna do a lot of snapshotting. You want separate subvolumes because you don't want to snapshot your var subvolume, because that thing is constantly changing with all of the logs and everything like that. Anyway, but that was kind of, they've got a really, really nice Plasma implementation, which kind of impressed me, and I always appreciate distributions that are kind of on the forefront of some of the more interesting developments, like Pipewire and Wayland and that, which, I suppose I could have dropped in Fedora to replace OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. It just, OpenSUSE seems to be, I had to pick one, so I chose that one just because they were out there first with ButterFS.
SUSE is also one of the oldest companies developing distros, right? Since the 90s.
Yeah, they've been around.
Actually,
In fact,
I think the oldest.
1996, maybe?
They were
94.
the first printed matter I'd ever seen, in an department store, an electronics store, because I was with a friend and he bought this SUSE. It was just SUSE, in those days. There wasn't this delineation between their desktop offering and their enterprise offering. It was just SUSE, and they used to release these sets, this box set that had either 2 DVDs or like 5 CDs, and then it came with an actual printed book, and it was a really well printed thing, and I think it cost like $35 or something like that. But I remember that was like one of the few distributions that was selling a usable something or other in the store that you could go and buy and install on your system. And it blew me away that my friend installed it on his machine. Then he said, "Here, you got to try this." And I'm used to Windows, telling you that's a big no-no, that you can't install that on one machine and then go and install it on another. And so I remember trying that. I couldn't make much use of it in those days, but it was interesting that I do remember. That had to be like 2001, 2002. But anyway, moving on. If I couldn't get any of those things, that will have meant that the entire Linux world would have imploded. And if I...
Well, that would be Fedora. And Debian.
Okay, so yeah, let's assume I can't get any of that stuff. I would move before I go to Windows. For anything that I absolutely have to go onto Windows for, I would probably move on to BSD. I don't think there's anything on earth that would make BSD go away. And I would probably they seem to have what I wrote down as austere goals, and they really do. They just have, instead of having these millions of ways of doing things like you're used to seeing on Linux, they kind of have a once we figure this out, we got it figured out, and let's not reinvent the wheel every time. That's me as a 300-foot observer, but I think I would probably give that a try before I went on back to Windows. But that's also coming from somebody that has 3 machines with Windows 11 installed on it, so take that however you will. But yeah, that's it for mine.
Okay, if there's nothing to add.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I have a couple of honorable mentions, because I did say that I tried Fedora but couldn't really use it on NVIDIA on my desktop. But for my tablet, for instance, where I want to use something with a touch screen, but I want to use something with good touchscreen support, but I want to use something with good touchscreen support, which is GNOME, and Fedora has the best GNOME implementation. So I tried several stuff like Debian and OpenSUSE, but I ended up sticking with Fedora because I'm also interested in the latest GNOME development. So, for example, on my tablet, I'm absolutely sure that I will be sticking with Fedora for the foreseeable future. And I didn't include Debian in my list because I wouldn't have any reason to use it either on my tablet and my desktop. But Debian is quite really good for either Debian or Ubuntu for work and university stuff, especially with niche stuff like programs used for like scientific research, which seem to be maintained in both of those distros, some of which I have used on my laptop. So that's why I'm using Debian on my laptop.
Okay, may I add one more distribution to it?
Absolutely.
No.
Maybe I'll go with Kubuntu. If Henri mentioned to Kubuntu because it's one of the finest KDE Plasma implementations. You could
Can
ever
any
use.
of you elaborate on what you mean by either Kubuntu or OpenSUSE or any distro having the best KDE implementation? Because I've tried both Kubuntu and Tumbleweed, and I've asked people online.
Opinions may differ, but
Yes.
for me,
Yes,
it's the
I-
best
Sorry?
KDE implement. It's the best and smoothest KDE implementation which I have.
Yes, but what does that mean? Having the best KDE implementation. What does that mean for you?
It means that it is fast, smooth, does not lag on my system at least. responsive on the click
Mhm.
and everything.
Mhm.
So mainly the improvements which I have seen from
Mhm.
previous Plasma desktop environment
Mhm.
versions.
Well,
Bill?
I have used a lot of KDE
Mhm.
implementations. My two favorites are OpenMandriva and Farron OS, and I think Farron has the most logical, sane defaults.
I mean, I'm looking at it from a new user's perspective, if you will.
Mhm.
Kubuntu has to be the well-polished KDE implementation if any new users to Linux like to switch.
Mhm. Well,
Admittedly, it's usually just about things that you
And
could probably go in and change yourself, for me anyway. But still,
that's
do I
my
want to
hmm.
install something and then go in and change a bunch of stuff just to make it look? I suppose that's part of the Linux journey, but
No,
if
Well,
I
I'm
had
not talking about customization at all, but okay, if you want to.
no,
no, I mean
I
that was my reason. What I meant by the best implementation.
I am gonna have to agree with Norbert on Fedora because yeah, on my tablets with the touch screen, it is really nice sometimes having GNOME on there.
mhm. One pro tip, if anyone wants to use Fedora or something with GNOME on low-end hardware, for example, my tablet has 4 gigs of RAM and I wanted to minimize RAM usage because I want to browse the web. What I did is I didn't install Fedora Workstation. I installed via the Everything That installer a minimal Fedora system, only CLI, and then I did sudo dnf install GNOME shell. And what that is, and that pulled the bare minimum dependencies for GNOME shell, which are even really well put together on Fedora because it also pulls things like Network Manager. It also pulls things like Pipewire, and if you install 3 packages, GNOME shell, Nautilus, and GNOME terminal, you pretty much have a completely working minimal GNOME system. And RAM usage on boot is around 500 megabytes, which is insanely low. I think ever since GNOME 40 came out, RAM usage has improved significantly on GNOME. It's still heavy, but not nearly as heavy as like 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, especially.
I notice when you undo when you take all of the extensions out,
Mhm.
it runs a lot lighter too.
And not even
I'm
just and not even the extension, and not even just the extensions, because that's, for example, Tracker, which indexes your files to make searching your file system faster. But
yeah.
I don't really want to do that because I would usually use Catfish. So even if you disable things like I don't know, the email service of Evolution and the Tracker file indexer, it reduces usage even further. But it reminded me how I borked my Fedora installation on my tablet last week because I wanted to reinstall GNOME because I wanted to fix something. So I uninstalled GNOME, then wanted to reinstall GNOME. But uninstalling GNOME took away Network Manager with it. And I don't have an Ethernet port on that device. So I ended up reinstalling Fedora. I didn't expect it to remove Network Manager because when I installed the minimal Fedora without GNOME, it already came with Network Manager installed. Because I checked the additional Network Manager uh, modules option in the installer. So because it was there before GNOME, I didn't expect GNOME to remove it, but it still removed it. Something similar, I decided to try to remove GNOME from Ubuntu to get a minimal Ubuntu install. I also tried doing the same with just and install whatever I wanted on top of it. I tried the same thing with Ubuntu Server, just take Ubuntu Server, install it on a desktop, and then install a DE. But the interesting thing is when I tried to install Xfce on top of Ubuntu or even Mate, it pulled GNOME as a dependency. I'm not sure if it's that. I'm not sure if it that's. I'm not sure if that's intended on Ubuntu or just a bug, but for some reason, if you install at least these two Xfce and Mate on Ubuntu, on regular Ubuntu, if there's no GNOME, for example on Ubuntu server, it will pull GNOME. I'm not sure why. Thank you for coming to my TED talk again. I will
No,
now
you're right
shut up.
though.
Yep.
And if you uninstall something, you end up like, and Linus Tech Tips found out the hard way by trying to uninstall this one little thing. It pulled everything out with it
Yeah.
too.
No, I did the same thing, but I did it on purpose.
Yeah. For the sake of research, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if Ubuntu just has this built-in expectation that if you want XFCE, you'll just install Ubuntu, and then
Yes, but I wanted to try if I can use Ubuntu like I would use Debian or Arch, where I can have a minimal install and then install whatever the I wanted to use.
yeah, I think they create a meta package.
Yes.
When
Oh,
you
they do have a
inst-
meta package. You can just install instead of Mate-desktop, you can install Ubuntu-Mate-desktop, and then it would switch everything. It would your NeoFlash would even say Ubuntu Mate. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
it is.
I just like being as close to upstream as I can, and one reason I one reason I can think of for using Ubuntu with XFCE instead of something like Xubuntu is if you want to use the LTS, because I think the LTS versions of of the various flavors get shorter support than
3 years.
Ubuntu itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I think I also uninstalled the package that lets you do this version updates on Ubuntu, because I expected there to be straightforward sources.conf like on Debian, but there was none. So I will just go back to Debian. It was a nice experiment. It was an interesting experiment, though, taking apart Ubuntu. I will now
Everyone likes
shut up.
to-
Okay, moving on to vibrations from the ether.
Everyone wants to take about Ubuntu.
Okay,
Take this if you want, Joe.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Henrik Hemren. Comment, hi. Your inners today, the format of more free discussion worked well, but also the traditional way works well. I believe the free discussion requires more attention so all hosts have their voice, and that you really listen to each other. Good this time. Tony Hughes, it has been a pleasure to listen to you. Your Linux knowledge and views, your bread baking and so on, your British view and accent. If you return, welcome. Else, and in any case, thanks for this period. Best wishes.
Which Tony Hughes?
No, it was
There is only one Tony Hughes.
Our Tony Hughes?
Yeah, it wasn't an email by him. It was an email from Henrik who mentioned Tony.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Niece.
Okay,
I have to
it
admit,
just-
I had that kind of. I didn't get confused.
Read the show
but,
notes, people.
Yeah.
No, it's written
Sorry,
like a
Moss.
Yeah, the first,
RGFM, man.
first time I looked at the email, I had three thoughts. It's either Henrik mentioning Tony, or it's Tony writing an email, or it's Tony replying to Henrik.
Yes,
Or
I had to
no,
think it
it
out.
was-
I had
or
to
Tony
think it
mentioned
out,
Moss.
Moss.
Or Tony
Maybe if
mentioning
Moss would have
written.
like corrected the grammar on it. Oh
Ah.
wait, he did.
Okay, ML Easling writes, and until I say otherwise, this is from ML Easling.
Gotcha.
Love the podcast. Been listening since 200X. Listen to your latest podcast, number 376. Joe, do you copy?
Yeah, I did leave all of the issues about Joe's internet going away in the episode.
You spoke of issues with your touchpad. I'm using a Lenovo Yoga 6 AMD 5700 CPU, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and touchscreen. Chromebooks has spoiled me to touchscreen. I wanted a rolling release. I hate Nuke and Pave. Tried many, but all had issues with the Realtek Wi-Fi card. That is, except PC Linux OS. Only issue with that distro is they don't support touchscreen. Eventually, after much trial and error, I came to settle on Seduction out of Germany with Cinnamon DE. Despite my having used Linux Mint Debian Edition 2 with Mate Desktop for years on an old Intel 8600 CPU with 8 gigabytes of RAM PC, and now using LMDE4 on an older AMD Athlon dual core with 8 gigabytes of RAM and Cinnamon DE, seeing as how they've negated Mate. But it won't work on my laptop because it supports UEFI. Long story short, I replaced the Realtek Wi-Fi with an Intel one. Seduction supports UEFI, touchscreen, hybrid sleep touchpad, and maybe even more importantly, tablet mode 2-in-1. FYI, I've been using Linux on bare metal since 2006. Prior to that, I used it in a VM on Windows XP, and prior to that, I tried BOS, BSD 386 back in the 286, 386 era, Ghost BSD, Solaris, and many, many others. Always came back to Debian-based Linuxes over Slackware, Gentoo, although it's great as Chromebook OS, or even Arch. Keep up the good work, and oh yeah, much prefer you as host. Your voice is much more suited to it than the previous host, but that's just my opinion.
Yikes.
Previous host would like a word with you.
How could somebody not like Leo? Come on.
Right? Well,
Leo
thank you
has
for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Who's
And-
the previous host and who's the current host?
Leo.
Leo, and it's interesting because in the previous recording where Joe was not at home, while listening to him while editing, his voice through his I assume used another microphone. Your voice was so different. I couldn't recognize your voice. It lagged deep.
The bass.
Yeah, it was more like mids and highs.
Hash bring back Leo.
Oh, we will, because we want to cover what was the name of the exam you're going to take? Nishant?
LPIC-1.
LPIC.
Yes. Yeah, so we want to try to get back Leo for an episode when we discuss that.
Well, it's just going to get harder from here. Well, in the summer, it'll be harder to get him back because he'll want to,
Well-
spend more time with his kids.
Can
So-
we do it before summer starts?
I
When's
hope
your
so.
exam, Nishant? When's your
March
exam,
5th.
Nishant?
March
Oh.
5th is my exam.
Okay.
If
try
you
to
if you
get
want
him
Leo
back before
on
then.
for it or for that stuff, you're gonna have to plan it out well in advance with him and make sure that you can.
Okay, this
Okay.
sometime around late February or early March then.
March, wouldn't it start summer, to be really exact?
Sorry?
March will be the start of summer, I guess.
In what sense?
Here it is in March, summer starts.
Okay, well, we can figure that out later and talk to Leo and see what his availability is. He might say I have no availability, so you never know. But no, I haven't heard of Seduction OS out of Germany, and it does have Cinnamon, so I might give that a try and see how well it works on a tablet.
It's
Seduction?
basically Debian seed, so Debian unstable, but with more user-friendly, like training wheels, if you will.
Oh, they
Okay.
used to have a GNOME version also before they discontinued it.
Yeah, because Debian unstable itself is similar to Arch in the sense that sometimes it requires manual intervention, I think, when you update something, and Seduction is supposed to take care of that for you.
Okay.
I'm on the
Okay.
website here. I like the look of it.
Yeah, I brought it up in a search, but I haven't looked at it yet because I'm busy doing this hosting thing.
I actually went ahead and installed Enlightenment 0.25 while I was listening to Bill and Moss talk about body. It's interesting, but it's really different from everything.
Yeah,
course
you got to
it
learn
is.
some things over again, but it's
Yeah.
so fast.
Because previously I tried it on a distro that had it pre-configured. I think I installed OpenSUSE with it has Enlightenment in the installer, but now I just installed Enlightenment on top of Arch, so it was it was unconfigured. So maybe that's why it was a bit weird for you to use for me.
Same like GNOME. When you install it separately,
Thank you, Moss.
totally stop.
I appreciate
It's a
that.
symphony. It's a symphony.
Okay, and moving on to check this out. All right, who put this in?
I'm the culprit.
Norbert. It's all you. Hydra
It's
paper.
Hydra
Tell
paper.
us about it.
Well, it's not a GNOME extension, but it is for GNOME. On GNOME by default, GNOME itself doesn't support different wallpapers on multiple displays, which is interesting because this is the only DE that I've used that has this feature missing. What Hydra Paper does is it basically lets you set different wallpapers for your multiple displays, And that's it. It's just something that maybe someone wants to. It's just something I wanted to put out there because it's just something I wanted to put out there if someone wants to have this feature. I've only tried it briefly on Arch, and on Arch, it's only available in the AUR, but it but because from the AUR it has to be compiled, it pulled like 400 megabytes of dependencies because it's written in Haskell, and I didn't have any Haskell packages installed. So keep that in mind. I think it's also available from the FlatHub, which might be the most convenient way, and I think it's in the Fedora repos. I'm not sure if I will be using it just because I'm not using GNOME on my desktop, and that's the only system I have multiple displays on. But it's something that I'm surprised GNOME doesn't have by default, because even Windows has that. It seems like a very basic feature. Well,
I wonder though if it's just not enough people running multiple monitors to make it.
but at the same time, GNOME has really good support for multiple monitors.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
That's true.
I think they're one of the best. They're one of the best when it comes to among the Ds when it comes to multiple display support. So it's weird that they specifically don't have this feature. But then again, they also don't have tray icons.
Yeah. Don't get
I
me
love
started.
GNOME. I really like GNOME, but they have to do some very basic. But they have to implement some very needed. Some stuff that is very much needed, like tray icons. Sometimes you just have to give a hard time to something that you like to see it improved.
Yep.
Oh
agree.
wait, that was 2 TED Talks in a single recording. Sorry.
Yep. Okay, moving on to announcements. Our next episode is at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on January 23rd, 2022. We have a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Our next live stream will be at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on, well, not January 23rd. It's going to be on January 15th at 2 p.m. And you can also get that converted to your time zone.
One thing I don't understand is why there's so just
Is
on
what?
the mailing list of Fedora, if somebody called it a cluster beep,
Duck. Cluster duck.
yeah, the GNOME variant of Fedora cluster. Somebody called it the cluster.
I mean, maybe
duck.
because it's GNOME and they don't like GNOME. End of story.
Okay.
What
And on to the wrap up. And if you want to hear more of me, Joe, you can catch me on a couple of the other shows that I'm on. That's the Linux Link Tech Show, which is at tllts.org, or the Linux Lugcast, which you can find linuxlugcast.com. You can find me on MeWe. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org. I really appreciate those emails. Either they make it onto the show, or if you ask me not to, I will respond to them. Or you can buy me a coffee using the link in the show notes. And then Josh Hawk, who wasn't able to be on the show tonight, you can catch him at joshontech@mintcast.org, at joshontech on Twitter, and most other social sites. Or you can listen to him on Crowbar Kernel Panic. Norbert, how about you?
You can send me an email at norbert@mintcast.org.
Okay, and then the other Josh, you can catch him at jt@mintcast.org, Josh Thacker on Discord, and at metal_foss on Twitter. Nishant?
you can always email me at nishant@mintcast.org or contact me on Discord. And if you want to play games, or I'm always available on Steam and the credentials are on the show notes.
Moss?
Oh, gotta wake up. Hang on. You can reach me at bardmoss@pm.me. You can hear me on Distro Hopper's Digest and Full Circle Weekly News, links in the show notes. And you can find more contact information for me on https://itsmoss.com.
And Bill.
Yeah, so you can email me at bill@mintcast.org. I'm at WC Hauser3 on Twitter, and Bill_H on Discord. I'm on the Facebook too, but nobody uses that anymore, so whatever.
Okay, before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. That would be Norbert for our audio editing, Josh Lowe for all his work on the website, Hobstar for our logo, InitRD for the animated Discord logo, and Londoner for our time sync. Bytemark Hosting for hosting mintcast.org and our backup Mumble server. Archive.org for hosting our audio files, and Mike for being awesome. The Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Thanks,
Yo.
Clem.
This time, honestly, I can say thanks, Clem. It's a wonderful distro to be on right now.
Now it's only me and Bill who have to get Omint.
Okay. Again,
I'm
I
on
do
Mint,
not have the
just for
folder
cheating.
shared with
So
me,
I'm the only one that's on Mint.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, this
In 2
this
weeks
new
time, I
machine
will.
got Mint.
In 2 weeks time, I will be all Mint 20.3. But I've been seeding when the Mint ISOs, Mint 20.3 ISOs.
Oh,
Okay.
Even though I
Turning
haven't
off my
installed it, I just
Audacity and I
decided to-
don't have any place to put it.
Two
All right,
new
I'm
Windows
ending